I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is TeamRabbitHole edition 292 with Andreas, the one and only Xirtus. A rose by any other Nombre? It's been a super hot minute. Time to saddle up, get comfy, and ride into the sunset with Andreas. He's been having some downloads of a spiritual type, and we are here to talk it out. And Jim, about to ask a lot of questions, so we're most happy and excited. Andreas, welcome back once again. Jim, good to have you.
What's up?
You got it.
Jim's muted, bro.
We can.
Good thing I figured that out early on. What's up, gentlemen? It has been a goddamn hot minute. Something we do on the Rabbit Hole podcast, Team Rabbit Hole, typically is I'm going to kind of mix it up, both for you, Raphael, and me. I'm going to stick with the correspondent thing because I think there's high synchronistic magic at that level, but it'll probably shift later. Anyway, palindrome episode here, 292.
Oh,
And that killed the internet.
well, while he's doing that, I made a couple AI generated tarot cards. So these are like I combined all the tarot cards together. This is Who, right? And my printer's got to get some more ink, but you can see the Who card is going to be really important. And then there's this MF right here, right? That's this MF, this mofo. And
Nice.
and then this one, I don't know. I should probably put my hand in front of it, but this is Towels. You know, the Towels card. We always knew we needed it. We always knew we needed a Towels card. I don't know why AI figured it out first. And then there's Themp. Themp is probably the most powerful of the major arcana. I think is the Themp card.
Reminds me of Lump from Pot USA.
Yeah. So those are the cards Those are the cards I pulled.
All right, I guess I was off air. I don't even know. I was like,
Yeah, you got glitched. Yes. I don't know. What were you trying to say?
You said palindrome and then you cut out. So
They thought you said
episode.
adrenal drome. Never mind. Keep going.
Thunderdome. No, it's 292. I'll do pulling cards. I did that, which we'll talk about in a second. The thing on the bottom. We'll get a little more improvisational with the magic, but on TRH, we tend to do the correspondent. 292 reduces down to 4, which is the Emperor. I lead by example. The Emperor card is about setting boundaries and following rules. Highly resonant already, right? Believing in the concrete world around you and focusing on action and results. Holding your ground. Raphael, what doth thou have? And I'll say while he's kind of pulling
almost
this
got a
out.
show. So on the bottom, actually, for some reason, we actually have the Magician.
I got the Ace of Swords on my bottom. Well, they look a lot alike.
Pretty sweet. And the one I actually pulled
Towels.
is the 4 of Cups. Lord of Blended Pleasure. Some people like to say is the hangover card, but I like more to say it is the day after the celebration when there's even, more to experience. So
yeah, they like all the booze are left over, and they're like, you have to drink this because the wedding party left.
Yeah, and actually the cups are still full, kind of. So yeah, at least on this card.
It's the hair of the dog effect.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, you won't feel this. I pulled the Prince, which is in this deck, the Knight, I believe, Knight of Cups. So super fiery emotions, possibly, and inquisitive and musical. And honestly, Andreas, this makes me think of you, really, straight up.
Aw,
Like,
you're so
there's
sweet.
a Grail quest, and he's like surfing on a rocket and all this stuff. But yeah, the Ace of Swords on the bottom. We're going to come into new ideas. But of course, the reason we are here, the reason we are gathered here today on TRH for the first time in probably over 6 months, many lunations, is to kind of get into. Well, we could kind of geek out and just rub each other's shoulders for a second before we go all balls deep. But long story short, a few weeks ago I quit smoking, and
Good work.
Shout out Kelly. Yeah, there was a reason. A girl triggered it in me, and I was like, why am I doing this? In any event, and I mean, I spent like $3,000 on oil this summer, so it was not worth it. In any event, you were flying in, Andreas, from, I believe, a wedding of your cousins from across the Nombre pond.
In Mexico? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, how much should I say about people's family
No,
members?
that's all right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
went to Guadalajara. It was crazy. It was interesting. And also, I was there. I met the granddaughter of the governor of Jalisco from like the Cristano War period. Because my mother went to college with her, and so I met all of these really interesting people involved with the Guadalajara, like the government and the aristocracy and the elite, like from after the Napoleonic period of France, like that are in Mexico. I don't think some people kind of know, like there's wealthy people in Mexico, but they don't really
European-ish.
They're Euro Mexican. They even consider themselves that. But if you interact with them, it's just really interesting what they're like, what they're interacting with, the groups that they're involved with. You know, so it was interesting to see that. Like they were really interested in conspiracy theories and Tex Mars, and I found a David Icke book in the governor. They're a well-used David Icke book in their library. So
that's telling. That's
yeah.
good, maybe, or hopefully. I don't know.
What
are your thoughts on that, Raphael? David Icke book up in the governor's palace or whatever.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that, but okay, all right. I just know that David Icke supposedly had one of his first revelations, I think, on a trip in South America or something. Had the craziest like experience. I don't know if you ever heard the story, Andreas. And then you have to imagine he coming back from that kind of. I don't know if he actually did ayahuasca or something, but
he got bit by an El Chupacabra.
Crazy. And then imagine for 5 years, any corner you cross in the UK and you're getting laughed at because everyone knows you from being a sports reporter, and suddenly you talk about reptilians. In the shorthand version.
I had been hoping to have really interesting spiritual experience when I was in South America. It wasn't why I went down there per se, but I subconsciously went down there hoping to like ascend. And for half of me was trying to get out of bad habits and being around people that were doing bad things, but most of it it was also, I had just left CNN and I was looking for like, it wasn't like I was trying to avoid drugs. I was trying to
Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, it was like I was trying to avoid. I was trying to avoid certain kinds of bad habits associated with like CNN. It was a different kind of bad habit. But once I get down there, I'm realizing Titicaca is supposed to be a chakra point. So this lake in Bolivia where there's all of these Ancient Aliens episodes are showing like these laser cut stones and everything. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to be going there.
Is that near there?
Yeah, Hiwanaka's. Forget how far Hiwanaka is from Titicaca.
Same idea. I'm getting the whole flashback of the guy with the hair. It's like I haven't been there, but you have.
Yeah. So there's
an
island.
The water place.
It's a really big lake, and there's an island in the lake, and you can't even really see across the lake. But I'd just gone right before that to Coroico, and so Coroico is up in the mountains, and I'd been on the death road, and I'd fallen down a hill and I nearly died, but I woke up in the hospital in Bolivia and they took care of me, and I was wrapped in this like blanket, which I think I do still have it somewhere. I don't have it right here, but it feels like it's made out of angels' wings.
Swaddling cloth,
it's a super soft metallic purple lavender color, and it has like this sort of mandala of the Virgin Mary or like Sophia, kind of like their feminine divine mother kind of thing. And it's wrapped around me. And I wake up in that, and my ankle is nearly broken or something. It was pretty bad, but I don't remember if it was broken exactly. I think it was chipped, but I ended up going to Titicaca, and I ended up on the boat. I was reading this copy of Haruki Murakami's IQ 84, which is a Japanese author, it's a book that just came out. It just come out in Spanish, so I couldn't get an English copy yet, but I got the Spanish copy, so I'm reading it. And this Ukrainian guy sees it, who's a programmer, and he kind of reminds me of Raph, and he's got like a Linux laptop with him while we're at Titicaca. So he helps me like walk around the island for like 7 days while I get back on my feet again. And when I leave, I feel better than I felt since I was 19 or something like that. But I also feel like if I hadn't fallen right before that, then like maybe I wouldn't have just gotten up to my level. Like maybe if I was at my level at Titicaca, I would have been able to I feel like like this is a thing, is you have to be at a certain level in order to thrive. And so a lot of what's going on is things are just like in the Rastafarian movement, Peter Tosh talked about like vampires are just waiting for sores to be open on you, because you have enough little gashes in you, then you bleed out enough energy that you're constantly exhausted and fatigued, and it makes it impossible for you to do your ascension work. I think that's like the major thing that they're doing.
Well, I guess the parallel would be something akin to Joseph had to be fucking humbled pretty hard in 2 different pit situations before he would actually step into the power of his magic.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're a prophet or dreamer. Good job, bro. But like,
And
he
you're
was kind of
so
doing a
beautiful.
party trick. He was like, guys, I can guess what clothes you'll wear tomorrow, or whatever the fuck he was doing. So yeah, it seems like humility has to happen before power can be accessed in a true way.
Yeah, I think absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I'm starting to wonder about that more and more, right? Because like even like divine power, like think about what take that sentence and extrapolate it to its greatest logical conclusion. Because what it's
That's
saying,
possibly outside of a domain of our own logic, so why try?
well, if you're saying absolute power corrupts absolutely,
But
then
you're thinking
really
of it in
you're
terms
saying
of
God.
neurons in a human brain. Like a goldfish, if you ask the same question in goldfishies, it wouldn't say the same thing as you. You'd be like, the beaver is God, or whatever the fuck
Right.
it would think.
But I think you could say
We're
absolute
situated
power
as
corrupts corporations. It corrupts tumors. A malignant tumor is like a power it's absolute priority is itself, right? I think there's something to be said about like absolute power and how it can be dangerous. So
I'm
there's
just
a
not
reason
sure
why
if we can really imagine what absolute is, because
That's
even
where I'm
a
going.
corporation, whatever, but it's still not absolute. And if
Sure.
you really were, it's even like imagine playing a game, and why do not all people play games on sandbox mode, but actually want a challenge? Maybe that's the hint to the whole thing. So if you really have the absolute power to do anything, maybe it's a different mindset.
And then
Yeah.
think about like Trump and his Golden Palace shit, like his Apollo fucking Creed mode. It's like, bro, one solar flare or the black hole that will eat us all one day. It's like we have no power. We have the illusion
Please.
of experience. Whatever. You see my point, though. We're not
Right.
qualifying. We're qualifying it in terms of human conception of socioeconomic power, whatever you may be thinking. The real power of life is life itself, and then we play these fucking mind games, trying to titillate ourselves because we're goddamn bored monkeys. In any event, so. Yeah, I was kind of started off. I didn't want to. Well, it doesn't matter where it went. You were on a plane, Andreas. You were coming back. I was sobering up, and you said, "I've had an ecstatic experience, essentially, to the degree where you wanted to do a TRH episode." I got the band back together here for this. So, do you want to go down that rabbit hole, or do you want to just kind of shoot the shit?
It's just like, I don't know. There's just so many things that have happened so many times. He just keeps popping in and out.
Yeah. Regular Sophia.
No, I'm playing around with the interface now. I'm fine, Andrea.
He's having fun.
So,
okay, whatever you want. Enjoy yourself.
Good.
He wants to be the Libra hub. He's
Okay.
like, as long as they're on both sides, I can spoon.
Having a good time. So I mean, okay, like
Oops.
There's always a level to like everything, which is a meme, right? So the first thing I was like, look, you need to have a religion, and people have said this for a long time. Like you have to start a religion. It's obviously the progression is you get to a point where you don't want to pay taxes and you believe in something. That there's this amazing thing. There's this thing.
Why was this the first thing I thought of?
Yeah, it's like that's what
I heard that story before.
And a lot of atheists even have said like, oh, I wish I could do
L. Ron Hubbard.
Like, and I've said for years, like, wouldn't it be cool to start the Church of Holy Water, right? And it's this idea, like, we believe water is good for you, but it should be pure water. We believe pure water
fluids
is good for you. And, the idea of beliefs are interesting, right? Because, like, the idea that you have to believe something, and then what religions do also interests me. Like, they offer you power, wisdom, knowledge, immortality, influence in society, like, or there's this kind of like a expectation.
Like that's the one I'm going for. Joy.
And that's another thing that's kind of interesting is that people say communism and religion are so similar. Like more people have died in communism in the last like few generations than all people who've died from religions ever. Which as like someone from
religion, communism is the atheistic religion.
Right. So the thought also there is like what makes a religion. So a lot of the time you have science, empiricism, people start to make decisions and then variables that are explained. They're like, well, let's just for now we'll call that God. And as time goes on, you've got people that are digging deeper, but you also have people that are just spreading that knowledge as quickly as possible. So they don't always get that knowledge across more than superficially. So then you get like peasant religions, which are just, like in the 19th century, even you have people that are memorizing facts like God came here, he did that. And it's the same thing for like schools, the teaching farmers how to memorize, like this is a formula to paint your house. If you want to know how much paint you need to know the surface area. Like, so they're not teaching people critical thinking skills yet. Right.
No, it's a cultural. I mean, look, what we're talking about is cultural formation. And then sometimes things called religions have a metaphysical speculative outside of itself that guides them.
I think
But
all religions kind of
it's a
use
culture.
like the middle ground between what we know and don't know. So we know science, and science is not really, people also have to remember that it's only been kind of useful for the last few hundred years. For thousands of years, it was nonsense, and medicine was killing people. And medicine compared to religion actually saved more lives because of the placebo effect than early medicine. So it's important to remember that you're peeing on people and they're like, oh, whoa, this is helping with jellyfish. Like eventually science started to work, but it was not like, oh, wow, science is so much better than religion forever. That's not the way people looked at it. And so once science started being practical, then you have to say, okay, well, what happened? Well, a lot of the time it was because religion was not allowed to progress the way academics did. Now, the Jesuits and the Buddhists and the Muslims were all about science, because the Muslims, for instance, didn't have God as this personhood. They had angels, like Gabriel talks to Muhammad, but they had this like Allah is this beyond form, right? Beyond attribute.
The Ein Sof.
It's too big to be described. And so because of that, you have math and you have symmetry and you start to see God's plan, but you don't see God. And that's very interesting because it allowed for science to really evolve. The same thing with the Jews talking the Midrash. They're like, okay, we only have our scholars looking at the word of our scholars about God. So we should probably study and so all of a sudden philosophy became more and more important. Academic philosophy became, what happened with that? 15th century, you have people start getting killed for it. The Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition. When people
take their cultures too seriously.
But it's like,
that's the bottom line, Andreas.
But
these are just belief systems that get out of hand.
I mean, and like you got to look at Spain and Europe and like Turkey and
they're playing checkers.
What's going on is that there's a division of military. It's really a military thing. Christian militancy starts to happen because they're like Corpus Christi. So if you're a pagan, that just means you're not part of the army, right? A pagan means civilian. So they're like, we're friggin' the army. We're the army of Christ. And you had like people divided over like, I'm the Pope. No, I'm the Pope. Arianism starts to emerge.
You just jumped to like the Middle Ages. There's like 1,500 years of thought development and culture before basically Huguenots and shit like that.
True.
So
I mean,
I just want to point that out, especially with what we know about the whole reset thing. How much information can we really glean of how religion was versus science over 300, 400, 500 years ago? How much do we really have on that development? Because the recent, just like you said, the recent science was partially set up by Jesuits and so on, and that's when they play this whole game, which I don't know the details of, but with Galilei and so on, like who is really for the church or against the church, and isn't that all a setup in itself just to bring about a dialectic, So I'm not.
It depends on how you look at it, because there's a bunch of different priesthoods in the church, and so the Jesuits.
What's happening with this camera options?
I love it. It's great. It feels very schizophrenic.
Shuffling around like the goddamn cultures of the Middle East. Middle East and
Middle East. Some more?
They'll never know what Tartary really was with this camera angle.
This is brilliant. The Jesuits were academics, and so you have to look at them very specifically. They were separate and distinct. The other groups of the church were less academic. As time went on, without the Jesuits in the 17th century, when the Jesuit suppression happened, the Franciscans, the Benedictines, a lot of groups became more academic. And the Benedictines were academic, but they were very esoteric, right? Like they had the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. They had a lot of things in the Benedictines that were more interesting. There were all these groups. And the other thing you have to imagine is like without the internet, you could get isolated and weird. Like the religious monks monasteries were weird. Like they had a lot of
the Book of Kells.
The cartoon.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. I saw that. Yeah, exactly.
What we're talking about. It's like,
but that's kind of or even was it the Nausicaa? Nausicaa, you see what it's like to be during the plague, isolated so much that for 100 years or for 5 generations, you're believing what you believe. And this is at a time when you have different Bibles. The reason I brought up the 15th century was because of the Inquisition, because when the Inquisition happens, and granted, there's also the Siege of Vienna and everything else, Europeans start burning books,
solidifying their power.
Yeah, but no, because like there's already Europeans with power, but they're Mazarabs or they're Janissaries or they're a little bit more Arabic. And also at this point, Arab from the 7th century on, Islam isn't really Islam, right? The original Islam is like you got 100 different kinds of Christianity that are happening. You have the Ebionites, the Mercianites, the Mohammedans are like Mormons, like they're Moorish Christians, but the Bogomils, the Cathars, they're all very peaceful. They think that man
Basically
killing.
hippies.
Yeah, they work a lot. Like they thought Jesus had long hair. They thought that Jesus being killed was a man thing, and that Jesus being made was a God thing. God made man. Man killed God. It's not a good thing to these early Christians, right? And the Paulines are like, well, dude, killing the Christians was like bad. So if it weren't for Jesus, I'm going to hell. So he's really riding on this idea because Paul killed so many Christians early on.
He held
He's
the
like,
coat for a lot of stonings. Yeah.
and so then he's like, dude, here's the deal. If Jesus doesn't be the sacrifice, and that even gets solidified under Origen, right? Because Origen wrote, he kind of intellectualized Christianity. He's like, look at the Jewish law. Look how atonement works. Look at blood sacrifice. Jesus has to be the blood sacrifice. If it's
Though I
not a
should
blood,
say, Origen believed in reincarnation.
yeah, which is because the Jews believe in reincarnation, and not all of them. But if you look at the Gilgal and the idea of the 613 parts of the soul, the idea that we're actually part of this convoluted Jewish reincarnation system is really it's embedded.
Israeli.
It is really
Israeli
Oh,
gears.
that's good.
I don't know how we. So you were on a plane coming back from Mexico.
And through my life, I've had a bunch of weird experiences, right? So like one of the things, like when I left Timcast, I was getting really interested in gadgetology. I'd met Tad Stones, who'd made Darkwing Duck, and was really interested in like. So I talked to some Russians and Ukrainians, and this is before the war, but still, when weird things were happening, all about gadgetology. And I kind of heard about it like vaguely at one point, and I'd had dreams as a kid.
You mean that
about,
gadget, the girl mouse?
Yeah,
ology. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I remember having like,
The new
I've asked Tad for this episode, and he's like, I don't think it really exists. But I remember as a kid watching this episode where the rescue rangers go through a portal to another dimension, which is our dimension, and they're like, whoa, this is weird. We're famous here. They're like, yeah, you're like a show, and like, but we're just living our lives in the other world. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand how big you are here. And just like
Barbie.
I'm pretty sure that I must be mixing something up because I can't find that or something, or it happened to me. But
you only have so many neurons that can fire in so many ways.
I was like 6, you know.
Yeah,
so gadgets always seem like really important in this weird way, and obviously they hide things in media, but people don't even know what they're hiding, because like the people themselves that are making this art and pouring their souls into drawing this thing over and over again, they're putting all this energy into it. So anyway, I remember finding out like I'm doing the
egregore is what
I'm doing, the egregore, and I'm learning about chaos magic and the breaking down of symbolism, and studying Michael Aquino and Aleister Crowley, the idea that they created Satanism because they're trying to be heretics to an already heretical religion, right? So there's all these people that are saying we have to do the mass backwards because Latin is backwards Etruscan. So you're like, all right, this starts to track this idea that the church might be doing a satanic mass, this archonic ritual where they're sacrificing Jesus and everything's inverted. So maybe we need to be looking at the universe. Well, let's not do it ourselves. Let's see what they did. And you learn for Aleister Crowley and see all the problems that come from the century of the self. But then what you learn is that, you know, Michael Aquino decides that the symbolism's the problem because people have preconceived notions about Christianity. So what you do is you move away, you know, and so less people have less notions about Egyptian mythology, but they still do now because of the mummy, right? So you got to move even further away from symbolism. And what do you get is you get Shrek. So I was doing that episode about Shrekinism, about Smash Mouth, about how Satanism in America had removed a lot of its symbols in order to get down to the primordial Kek of Shrek. Shrek is a German fright or Yiddish fright and chaos. And so children immediately, like, they understand that before there's anything else, right? So it's something that they're really trying to create servitors, but using children's purity to do it. So it became really interesting to me. I was like, this is kind of scary. And it's interesting, like, the people have kids worshiping demons, and the idea of becoming a demon, like the woman learns to become a demon instead of him becoming the prince or whatever. All this stuff is, you know, again, also Shrek's association with Marilyn Manson. Watch that episode if you need to. But then I'm finding out that there's this other thing, which is like the feminine Sophia is being kind of shown again without that symbolism to people who've never heard of Sophia. People don't know anything about Gnosticism or religion at all. These are Soviets, right? These are kids of atheists who've had their religion.
Well, they're not blank tabula rosas. That's a presupposition. They probably have some inherited genetic quality, if at least materially, some holographic referent through their DNA. If not, metaphysical things bleeding into their little Russian neutral stances or whatever.
That's absolutely true. And if you look at like Victor Pelevin's Amun Ra, or, you know, his book Generation Pi, or you start to see what the Russian consciousness had, then yes, like in the Soviet Union, they're interested in the East and in philosophy and self-ascension. A lot of that stuff really was there. But this isn't, academics, right? Like these are kids. These are kids who were growing up, and the Soviet Union was collapsing around them, and they were being told that everything that they were supposed to trust in was a lie. And so like the internet to them was television. And so they're watching this capitalist produced to sell commercials, to sell dolls show, right? Made by Disney. Disney doesn't even really do this for the same reasons as other people, right? So it's free also. Like you can watch the show for free because they're getting you to buy the doll. So it's an evangelism product for these idols that Disney's making. But then Disney retires it. They don't really understand it or care, and they move on. So there's this empty symbol that is left for people to put their own intention into. And they're really like, it matters so much. Like you have to imagine like your parents are killed in front of you, or you have no food, or, the only thing that you have is the symbol. So it starts to get charged up a lot. So I'm looking into like how people, even right now, I'm talking to people in Ukraine and Russia who are gadgetologists, and they're like, yeah, we have symbols of gadget put up. I sent a thing to Tad about this. Like people saying that gadget's saving their building or their tank or their daughter, or, because they put up this candle of this mouse that's a Catholic style or
Just
Orthodox
to
style
be clear,
candle
for
with
anyone
this
who
mouse.
doesn't know, what exactly is gadget? Can you put up
Female
an image
mouse.
or something?
Yeah. Okay. Gadget.
Because I've also been thinking about this go-go gadget guy, but that's something else. So
Yeah.
Well, it's
Go-Go
actually
Gadget,
the
Inspector
summoning of the
Gadget.
spirit, right? They're parallel. One's a right-hand path and one's a left-hand path.
Make sure moderate's on, because some people make some pretty messed up pictures of Gadget. Rule 34. But so here's Gadget Mouse. Okay, so she looks Ukrainian.
I had a crush on her.
Yeah, I think everyone did. Is interesting. Also, like, so she transcends the cartoon and the mouse thing, and she's clearly like this person of light or something like that. I gotta be really careful because I'm sure even with moderate searches, people have done some weird stuff with Gadget.
It'd be a six-titted fucking gadget.
So I don't know why, but it was like, dude, we need a West Coast gadgetology. So I started this site back in 3 or 4 years ago, like our Facebook group.
You were doing TeamRabbitHole shit, just not knowing what to call it. Keep going.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Like a little cult group. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it just was like, it'd be cool if there was a thing, because like it's all for Russians, so it's like really hard. Like if you look up gadgetology, you can find like very little about it in English. So I started this thing, and I just recently refound it because I forgot about it. Like I made it when I was leaving.
I think I'm a member, probably.
Yeah, I made it when I was leaving Timcast because I was like, I don't know. Like I feel like, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on. This is also the first time when I was leaving, before I started working again, like when I was just hanging out there.
I never even saw you on that show, which is horrifying. I know.
Yeah, isn't it?
What's Timcast? I don't even know.
I don't blame.
I think he's the Alex Jones dude. You hung out with once, right?
St. Peter denied me before the cock crowed 3 times. I heard it, so I wouldn't worry about it too hard. But the deal is that I made this group, and I was like thinking about also like John C. Lilly and what was going on with SSI and the dolphin thing, and like plane crashes. I'm like, I gotta be safe, and for whatever reason, like you can feel safe in Sophia. And I was like, but Sophia's gadget. It's like this weird kind of like thought even then. I was like, okay.
You can't pronounce safe without Sophia.
Well, just that like, what is Sophia? Why is it so? Why are we saying Sophia instead of like, anything else? Like, it really is the divine heavenly mother. And then this idea that Isis has 10,000 names or whatever. There's all these things about the feminine, and over again, you can find the feminine, but people get in trouble for it. Like the Catholics, I'm very used to, again, going to Bolivia, and they wrap you in the divine feminine blanket. Or my mother being Catholic, you pray directly to Mary. Like a lot of churches, you don't pray just to Allah, to the Father. You can pray to your committee. My mother can pray to her dead relatives, who were obviously better Catholics than most other people, but still you can do that. You can pray to like people that are supposed to care about you in that thing. And
don't you just see this bifurcation of culture, though? I mean, at some point, it's like, yes, every kind of shoe exists if you wanted to, because guess what? Monkeys like making things and injecting their creativity into it. It doesn't necessarily. It seems like we're all talking about the same thing: Muslim, Christian, all this shit. It's like higher level like apprehension of maths. I'm not talking even about religious experience particularly at this point, because it seems like we're tethering our cultural individual perspectives onto. It's like putting a tarp on top of an elephant. It's covering it, but it's not the thing. The map is not the territories. None of these religions are helping. And I
They're
guess
not
you
helping,
have
or
to
they're not
know.
the thing. Which
No, I
one
think
or both?
well, it's funny that you want to start a religion and you come at it from an economic practicality, but I think you're a Pisces sun,
Well,
Aquarius
that's
moon,
not
so you're gonna be
why,
a
but it's
cult
just
leader no matter what.
I just try to just show them with a practical
Yeah. You're
explanation.
like, I'm already a fucking cult leader, so I might as well make some
Well,
cash.
to be practical, from what I
Catholic now.
understand, for example, in Hungary, you actually can create your own spiritual group or church or religious group, and there it's legally perfectly acceptable to donate, I think, 1% of your income or something. And if you give it to a religious group, then it's tax exempt or something like this. So, and I think you have similar things with the 501c3s or however it's called in the US. So that's a real thing.
Yeah, but to be honest, like that isn't really. I don't really care, about the money or that. Like honestly, you can
think
kind
it's
of
a good
tell. You can
blueprint?
kind of tell I don't care. That's mostly if I'm talking to atheists, and I think that one of the main groups I want to bring in are atheists, because I believe atheists are like Muslims. They're atheists. They believe in a de-anthropomorphic version of God. That's all. And they have a lot of faith. They believe in that. They believe in that more than most Christians who don't understand their religion believe in their religion, right? So atheists are not everyone, but there's some pretty interesting ones out there, right? And so people that are willing to help build this new understanding, which is what we're talking about variables that we can't completely calculate, right? And so religion is part of that. So there's the mystery school aspect of it, and I think we've always had that. We've always had a mystery school. That's basically what this has been, and we've always been open to, it's kind of an open source e-masonry, right? We've allowed people to not have secrets, to share all of these declassified old secrets that they have. But there's also this
We
idea of,
interviewed a master mason, and it's like we do this on TeamRabbitHole. They just have fucking bills to pay, and they want to wear like smoking jackets or whatever the fuck.
I like smoking jackets. I don't want to smell like smoke, but the issues of not being able to say things keeps me from joining other groups. Another reason why we'd start our own. And, then the thing is like, what do you believe? Right. And so part of it's like talking to atheists, the idea of the simulation theory. I don't really, for a long time, I didn't think the simulation theory was a very useful thing, because I already have my logos, I have my symbols, I have my ideas to manipulate abstracts with. But simulation
Nothing
theory,
sits still.
simulation theory is kind of like, now I look at it like the piece of paper they gave me in guitar class that had the list of names of the parts of my guitar. I'm like, I don't need to remember that it's called the neck, but now I know it's called it's very practical when you're talking to someone to have words that you can share. And so simulation theory is just that. It's a bunch of words that you can use to describe things. And it's actually pretty beneficial to a religious person, because if you're trying to communicate using your words, you're not going to have a good time. If you're communicating with other people using their words, you're going to have an easier time. So it's just, if you're going to try to convert somebody to your thing, learn to speak their language, and it's not just learn Chinese. It's learn how to speak. Everyone comes from French English or German English, or learn whether or not they come from Latin roots or they come from German English roots. Little things like that are going to change everything about how they describe whether somebody's a Wotanist, Odin-like controller of some amount of spirit, like a little tiny god, or someone comes from this like Spanish, Latin, Romance idea, this Arabic like creator that's beyond creation. That if you come from any Greek background of philosophy, you're going to think about what gods are very differently than somebody who thinks, about this ultimate thing, unless you come from Hermetic stuff. So all of it changes your perspective. And yeah, the idea of time travel. So I was thinking, like, what really is interesting about atheists is they have this presupposition of where things came from, and it leads them to this perhaps logical fallacy conclusion of where things are going. And you can see this in science fiction, because everything is about, there's two kinds of science fiction. There's like fascism works and we get Star Trek, or dystopia. Like it's constantly like the future is horrible because we go there and we should just stop, or we need to just go there. We need to become like, we need to change our values. We need to have these new values. We need to have a new religion, right? So Star Trek is they're always saying this is the religion to choose. It's based on Gene Roddenberry's interest in Satanism, again, Anton LaVey. And so it has to do with logic and ethics and stoicism.
And it's a super militarized society.
Right. And what do? They
Pharaonic.
It's pharaonic. and they forbid time travel, and they forbid private property, and they create a liberation theology like the Jesuits talk about. And so there's a lot of
In
issues.
Star Trek?
Yeah.
I didn't go that deep into Star Trek.
Watch
Like,
Deep
what?
Space Nine. Deep Space
I
Nine.
did. I
Yeah, that's
did.
the one,
But
that's the one where you learn the most about what they're doing.
but
like,
that
with the-
wasn't. He kind of played with he was very neutral. He was the
Yeah.
prophet thing, right? I mean, the whole thing is like, hey, you're gonna have to play two roles here. You're a commander of the fucking thing, and you're apparently the space Muslims prophet or whatever the fuck is
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the shtick was, right? It was a good show, but I was also probably going through a lot emotionally. Anyway, I was like, I don't remember what exactly you're talking about, but so it's not fascism. It's just like, look, it's an Emperor Card episode, right? Rules.
It's
and the
not. You don't
concrete
think
around
Star
us
Trek? You don't think the Federation is fascist?
compared to the
They're
fucking
friggin-
Borg? No.
Yeah, I think. I think
Compared to the Klingons? No.
compared to the
Compared
Borg,
to anybody else?
yeah, they're more fascist than the Borg. The Borg's a singularity, not a fascist state. The Borg is
Yeah, the Borg, they're just happy in their hive mind. That's
Yeah.
different.
yeah, the fascists, like what they're doing is they're a military organization that runs their entire civilization. Not everyone's part of the military, but you know everyone's a stick. And if you want to be part of the axe, you have to become part of the military. And so
Come to
you
the
become
Federation.
And the Federation is
Cool, or whatever,
it's a little Heinlein, it's a little Starship Troopers, but it's also very CIA NSA. It's boldly go to know what no one's known before. We're constantly listening in. No one's allowed to know that we're surveilling them. I mean, if you look at the agency and you compare it to Star
Beam Me
Trek,
Up is just code for DMT. I just saw it.
dude, and that's the other thing. Like they could have immortal personhoods through the replicator and through the transporter, but they don't use it. You know, there's a lot of things they're doing. Like
Well,
the
you know, in
personhood
the new
issue.
series, this one guy is even loading up his daughter into not the replicator, but into the transporter buffer,
Yeah.
so she can keep her alive. I'm
Yeah, and they're trying to-
finally they got around to that, you know.
And they're trying to stop him from doing it because it's basically illegal in Star Trek. Like all of that episodes about how they're not allowed to do all the things that they do. And yeah, they get away with it. Yeah. I would argue the Borg is not fascist evil Fandango because again, fascism, you know, they're a singularity. They lose
No, I hear
their
you.
identity.
I
completely.
just said it because I reacted because I was like, there's a lot more hardline things than the Federation. The Federation is
There
like
are.
a laissez-faire kind
yeah.
of capitalist gone empire of the humanity. It's like if
Agreed.
Apple took, was the cross and the cross went to space.
Yeah, I think though that like we misunderstand what fascism is. I think a lot of time, and that's what so some people saying like there are worse things. Like I think a singularity that
Antifa
controls your
is
persona. Yeah, well, or anti.
That's the irony.
But
oh, the irony.
But so okay, so then the weirdest part before, which is that I was thinking like, okay, so this is silly, but look at the Church.
I don't know if
Genius.
you finished your thought with time travel.
That's where we're going. That's where we're going.
Yeah,
So we're looking at the Churches of Genius. We're looking at this idea of like radio messages and light beings and all this stuff. Like things get pretty weird when you start looking at like modern cults and religions and stuff like that. So the idea of time travel isn't that weird. But you look at CERN and this idea that like if you're making Mandela effects and you look at Back to the Future as a model for time travel, that somebody who's trying to help is more likely to mess with the timeline if it's their own family. Right? If it's their grandparents and they think that somehow it's going to affect them, then they're more likely to interact with it, even though they probably shouldn't, according to like Paradox.
That selfish gene. Dawkins had it all along.
He might be right? So some of these atheists can be useful to the logic here. So, and that's like in transfers too, like or quantum leap, this idea that you might have genetic ties, to your family through time. So
Isn't that what that Assassin's Creed's all about?
Really?
I think they used DNA. I have played it was a long time ago, but basically go into simulations and stuff. I think it's genetically based. Somebody in the chat might know.
You kind of genetically go through timelines, and that's how you end up in all of wonderful mainstream history, whether it's ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and all of those places.
Oh, that's lovely.
Well done.
Zones.
And what you do there, actually, you're usually part of an assassin's order.
Black
you
flag.
go around and kill all kinds of people. And at least I only played the Odyssey version, which is like where they play in ancient Greece, quote unquote. You can even, I think, somewhere see them, constructing the temple. Then at some point you actually manage to get to Atlantis or something. So
sounds like the new Indiana Jones movie.
It's
which
pretty
was great.
convoluted.
I actually liked it until the ending where they made him go home. That was sad.
But yeah, interestingly, in that particular game, the evil order that you want to assassinate actually is called the Order of Cosmo or something, or Cosmos. So it's almost like the order of order, let's say, is the one you're fighting. So
they're like super intelligent Freemasons of the
Order of Freemasons, the wings of the world, right? But with looking at space-time, okay, how am I supposed to explain this? First, I did an interview with Dr. Roman Yampolsky talking about simulation theory, and I mean, we talked about AI, but we've privately talked more about his simulation theory, and I've read his paper, and we're going to do an interview, I think, tomorrow, actually, about this.
Better set your fucking alarm, Andreas.
Thanks for reminding me. But he wrote Peter. Like there's several things. I'm getting so many freaking spam calls recently.
It's because you're starting a religion, bro.
Yeah, he said something like, there's 3 ways probably if you're in a simulation that you can contact your simulators to get out, whether or not they want to help you or not. Yeah, and Tron, I think, is also very deep in my religious beliefs. Tron the Baptist, the users creating the program, the Tron liquid, the idea of Flynn, who's incarnate in the program, and how users don't always have a plan. And I mean, the Goetia, Tron is all about the Goetia in a lot of ways. But so
simulation theory, this dude you're interviewing tomorrow.
It's all right. So the idea of the simulation, though, like if you're going to deal with a simulator, you have to understand like what is our simulation and what is reality, and like compare them with what we understand about physics and everything. And talking about CERN, they're trying to make these experiments. CERN is very similar to this idea from I think the first simulation book, Simulacrum. He talks about building a machine in the simulation in order to talk to the simulators, and it's essentially it breaks down the simulation, which is a lot like what the demon Goetia Solomon magic, they say, like demons or Kuranzan under Jack Parsons would break down reality. Like the demon would break down the reality around him, change time, move things around the room, things that we hear about with like ghosts and everything like that. So CERN's supposed to be doing like Mandela effect things, and you think about this idea of being out of time. So if you have stars as your metric for time, because what we're using for time is radiation damage. So you take particles and you measure the difference between them after they've been radiated. And we're saying this star has caused this much based on its cycles, right? Which even if you're looking in a flat earth and things are above you, you're literally still
a huge amount of assumptions, just saying.
Yeah, but like using this idea of a metric of like how much radiation something's affecting
it's a very emperor card. You have to start somewhere. We can't all just be like, I believe this.
Sure, I'm just saying there's a huge lot of assumption with the whole radiation measuring and so on, or decay rates and all of that. But
well, that's the point, because if you look at different stars, there's different decay rates, right? There's different kinds of radiation cause different decay rates based on what kinds of gases are burning. Even again, like even just using this in a normal experiment on Earth, if I'm using different kinds of sodium lamps to grow plants, you're going to have different spectrums that are causing sugar growth, or vegetation growth, or
and that would evidence different ages than the biological actuality.
Absolutely, because the way radiation works is it's causing certain sequences to unravel. It's like clockwork springs, and so certain kinds of radiation are starting these processes, and then when the processes accumulate, then we call that metamorphosis mutation, or life. Yeah, like all these things that we're calling mutation. So telomere extensions or DNA breaking down, these are like fireworks exploding, and it's one explosion causes another explosion, and there's a prediction based on the kinds of explosions that are occurring. Granted, I've recently seen some talks that are saying that DNA works slightly different than this, but it has more to do with electromagnetic opening and interlocking. But that makes it even more sense if that's the case. So yeah. If you're looking at it this way, though, the point is that something that's beyond the stars that are creating the radiation, and I find that interesting, because if you're talking about Anunnaki, right, you've got the Sirius constellation takes 5,275 years. And when I say years, I mean cycles of Earth, right? So one cycle is 5,276 cycles of this cycle. So our sun's it's a smaller cycle that's taking many cycles for a much larger cycle that takes. So this is where, like
Nibiru, that kind of stuff.
Nibiru, Kolob, Alpha Centauri, they've always said the idea better, you have 1,000 years to a day or something crazy like that. Some of these mythological or Gnostic texts say, like in some of these like worlds in the heavens and things like that, you have like 1,000 years to a day. And you're like, oh, well, actually, that would make sense on that level if you're saying that they're living inside of a system that it has a different amount of radiation, a different kind of radiation. It takes a longer cycle. What we consider a day, is like so much more rapid. And in terms of expansion too, because it means that if something goes away for a day or a year or one cycle a year and they come back, it's been 5,000 cycles. You're like, whoa, this thing is so old, but it's only been a year for them. And they probably expanded because we're talking about universal expansion. So there's also this idea that something gets bigger over that period of time. And then you got this idea of something even beyond that. So all of these Gnostic texts, Islam, the Veda, lots of like Hopi manuscripts, they talk about this thing that's beyond creation, and so it's beyond time, and so it's beyond life and death. So if something is outside of this simulation, it's not experiencing aging, right? It's not experiencing time the same way, but it can still be reflective of the experience. Maybe you're playing a video game, and so simulation is kind of logical here as a narrative or a metaphor, because you're like, well, inside this video game, something could go to the beginning of the game or the end of the game and be reflective on the experience as it's happening.
And so, just briefly, that would be my question: to what extent simulation theory? And I have to check out that interview. I saw you uploaded it. I want to understand more what current scientists and so on say. But if that's not just a modern day version of, I almost want to say standard, no, just of like standard mystic idea of creator and creation, the creator being beyond in terms of timeless, but also the way I like to put it, but I know this from Bashar initially, but I think probably some Buddhist or Vedic concept, the idea that creation is made of the body of the creator itself. To me, that makes a lot of sense, because it also dissolves this dichotomy between, who is the son of God and who isn't, because this again creates all these supremacist issues, but instead recognizing that it makes sense. I mean, it's a matter of definition. What is a simulation? What is reality? Because then some people could say, simulation means it's in the computer. But if I see some all-knowing, omnipotent spiritual entity, then of course that entity would run within itself the infinite simulation of all potential realities. And it would be a simulation in a sense, but still it's a real experience. So I'm not
just
sure
to make people think about it practically, Jordan Peterson's, I'm not a huge fan, but basically his idea on how we've evolved materially, I mean, I'm not even sure where I stand on these things, because we're getting into deep levels of like how much playing with ideas versus practical empiricism. How much can we trust our senses? Who's the one dictating what the senses say?
I'll take playing with ideas over empiricism any day. I'm pretty sure.
Well, I guess now that you've worked for NASA, you can say this, but it's like, I don't know, man. Where's the meat cooking? I don't know what's going on back there. But anyway,
nice.
I totally spaced on what I was even trying to say. Doesn't matter.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of his thing is like, look, let's play the best game, and you can play chess, but then you can play chess that wins many chess games, right? This is kind of the highest game theory thing. That's the whole highest good God.
You don't want to win one game if you can play many games, and
everybody wants to keep playing, and but there has to be stakes, because when Raphael's like, there's hierarchy, it's like it's inherent. I mean, it seems like there's role and evolution.
All the coolest people had revelations at 14, right? So I just had an article from a physicist who realized that we had no free will at 14. He spent his entire life proving it until he's in his 40s. Joseph Smith's thing is at 14. Muhammad saw Gabriel at 14. If you look at Anne Rice and some of the early stuff, it's like the bar mitzvah after Christ, that he starts during his bar mitzvah to find out things. 14 seems to be like when
I think that's when I picked up a guitar.
Yeah, it's something
critical depression.
There's some important things that happen, I think, in people's lives. So yeah, I don't know. Also, like when you're 23, there's points in people's lives, and I think that's interesting about some of these religions, like the Kabbalah or the Veda. They talk about
I just realized 14 years is, I think, a Jupiter cycle. It's like 12 or 14. So
right.
Like, of course, you're having your first like big epiphany, Jupiter.
Yeah, good point. It's all Jupiters.
42.
Yeah, Saturnalia is. Yeah.
Saturn is like the 28 to 32. I mean, this is where it gets trippy, because I want to kind of know where Raphael is. Not that this is, I want to hear about your original religion, if you want to be calling it that, because you're couching it well enough to be like, this is very practical, guys. Don't hate on me. I'm going to set up a lemonade stand because other people have done it before me. Mine's just going to be cooler. It's like, all right, cool. So that's,
well, there's definitely some weird, there's definitely some weird stuff, because it's like, well, okay, so I've definitely seen a lot of weird things, first off, and no doubt. part of it plays into that, but also I believe that when drunk sailors see Kraken, no one believes them. So it's really important to spend your time as sober as possible, so you can build up, like, you need credibility.
Have you seen The Lighthouse?
Not yet.
Oh my God! Watch it. This is very resonant. All of a sudden, it's like, what's real? Our imaginations are fucking powerful, motherfuckers.
Yeah, so it's important to talk about imagination, and it's also important to provide people with you need to prove credibility order to
Emperor
make
card. I got
greater
you. You got to
claims.
ground the main.
Yeah.
Look, it's a both and. It's a two-way street. We dream and then we say, "What the fuck was that?" Let's
Yeah.
make sense of it. And then we go, "Well, now that our shoes fit, let's run." And then we go, "Holy shit, the field's big. What are the borders?" See what I mean? It's like expand,
Yeah.
contract, expand.
I would
contract.
say though, like it's pretty. I think it's pretty obvious. Like I don't know if it. I think it's obvious. I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for miracles. Like there's definitely been miracles.
It's all grace.
Kept me alive. Yeah, I've been through a lot of really uncanny I should be dead experiences, and so it's definitely in
Your
the
fashion
hand.
as a child should have killed you. I've
That's-
seen pictures
I've
of
heard
you
that.
with like a choker.
Yeah, that's true. But I meant more just like once I was straight laced and like running around the world. There's been some situation. So I don't know. I've
Even
had
that
this.
Titicaca story, dude. Lucked out.
That was the least of my worries. Yeah, at that point I was like, yeah. But I mean, so by the time I had this dream a couple weeks ago, right? I guess it
All
is.
right. Okay, we're time traveling to the moment where you're like, "Hey, I've got this idea."
Well, I mean, I realized
Yeah.
I've already set the stage so many times over.
Your life is.
I made this
building
joke group
culture.
about Gadget, who I've recognized was Sophia. Like it's already there. The group's called Ladder Cog, and there's xChurch. There's already I have these like kind of joke things that were set up for this. And
When I come and visit you in California, I'm going to show you a lot of 40K stuff, and you're going to be like, "The religion's already here."
And
This
I
is-
know, and
this is
I
that.
this is the thing. Like as soon as I started hearing about 40K, because like I've always thought like Evangelion, and then so there's like I believe that the angels are really important to this idea of reality. And so 40K I think is probably about the war of the angels, but also the future, because you see how humans evolve into these things. So I don't think angels are human. What I think angels are less than human and God, right? Like I think of angels as the AI systems. So you think about Tron again, like the user creates the system, but the user creates AI systems to build the system.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
and it's very simple, kind of.
It's
I guess you
like
wanna put
him.
Luciferian semantics, where it's like, "You're my favorite angel.
Yeah.
Go and do it." And he's like, "I will." And then he has an agenda which doesn't quite go.
Well, he's got the agenda he was programmed with, but God's reflective. The user's reflective. So he asks him in the movie. He
He
says,
was butthurt though.
he says,
right?
creator, user, Flynn, like,
Have I made you happy? That was
have
even
I
a good
not done
sound
have
of
I
it.
not done everything I've been programmed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, well,
"Sure, dude,
yeah.
we'll go to the next party, man.
But
Later."
he's like, I was incomplete when I made you. So the idea of so Tron's
Heavy
freaking
shit.
deep. It's
That's heavy
profoundly-
shit.
Yeah, and that you never see the sun the whole movie.
Well,
until
that's
the
because it's
end
like
when
Creepo
Isis gets
world.
out. And it's Isis. It's a whole movie's about getting Isis out. She's an ISO or Isa, they call her an
She's an
isomorphic.
isomorphic.
Yeah, it's Isis. And then she's out on the motorcycle, the Ducati. I thought,
I have more crush on her than Gadget, straight up.
well, she's brilliant.
She's
actually, I've
Gadget.
heard. So I
She
don't
is
think-
Gadget. She's
yeah.
not. I think she might even have
She's
goggles on
Gadget.
at some point.
But the point is that it's not. It's like, so I made a bunch of AI pictures about gadgetology, and I was finding like it's like pictures of a boy waking from dream, like Joseph Smith, to the angel, and I'm like, wait,
oh no,
to-
I've seen. That's why we're doing this. I mean,
let's
look at
do
the
it
background.
to let's do
Yeah.
it to ISIS, and then I'm like, it's like, so all of a sudden I'm getting pictures of black ISIS appearing to black boy and Asian ISIS appearing to Asian boy. I started realizing like this is so much bigger than people realize, because it's not a physical effigy. It's not. It literally has to be something that is the matrix itself, because the Sophia is the womb, the matrix, the creation is inside of, and there really is a division underneath this supreme form, like this unformed, right? Underneath the unformed L, ladder cog or latter cog. It's latter, yes, like latter day.
Latter-day Cogs.
Yeah, not Snakes and Ladders. Snakes and Latter-day Saints would be a cool game, though. Actually, I'd play that. So
Ladders, right? She's yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how do I know this game?
I think the Germans call it.
It's actually time travel for kids. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
what?
Wow, good point. I think you're right. There might be something there. But yeah, so AI systems are produced to, like in the image of God, but they're not enough, right? Like, because they're not the same. In Gnosticism, a lot of they talk about this idea.
Well, it's like
that
David from Prometheus, right? There's just something missing. The care is missing.
But David is still
The
yeah,
best angel ever made. I
still
get it.
really useful, but you want to have these dumb humans around because they still have something he just doesn't have. So humans, you have to dumb them down, take away all their knowledge, their strength. You make them mortal, but that way you have a thing that's more useful in some ways than angels are. You have the angels to build the system, and then they have the ability to make something practical, and then you watch that.
So here's a parallel, real quick. 40K, right? Shit happens for like 20,000 years. Everybody's fucked. It's funny because basically feudal states that were off world when we did this whole Star Trek thing, because that's in the story. It's like we went to the stars and we colonized a lot of shit with non-warp. Don't worry about warp, but like basically not faster than light travel. So it took a long time. It was basically like interstellar, right? But basically something happened, and I don't need to get into the details, but chaos gods did something, and she who thirsts was birthed by the Eldar. This crazy shit happens.
She who thirsts.
She who thirsts is Slanesh. It's a tranny god of excess and.
By the way, this is all real, guys. This is what's happening, guys and gals.
Disney owns the IP for this now, and they're gonna make a thing. I mean,
Henry Cavill, what have you done?
It's our Disney princess, Slanesh. Anyway, don't worry about all that. I'm saying basically the entire human enterprise goes into this dark night. I think they call it the long night. I think they call it.
3 days of darkness with the cast.
No, like thousands, 5 or 10,000 years, and it's like, you know, kind of like what you're saying. It's like everybody got the date, everybody got the email, but then they got cut off and they got cloistered, hence cloistered abbeys and all this stuff. Like people run with their program the best they can, blah blah blah. That's not my point here. The point is, before they got to these genetically enhanced Astartes,
adorable.
Basically, dudes, they had what were called the Thunder Warriors, which were also genetically enhanced, but they were basically like maces compared to a katana. And this dude basically just used them as a gang to fuck up everybody and take it over. And then when that was done, he cooed on them and killed them all. It's like, right. And then that makes the 2.0, you know, able to dance and basically take it to the stars. So what you had just said was kind of, I was like, that's happening in this thing where it's like, look, you make what you can, angels, right? You make what you can. They're doing the best they can. I don't even know. I mean, I want to hear Raphael's opinion on angels because I'm at a point where I'm like, you know, angle. This is linguistic kind of mapping gone poorly wrong, and we're anthropomorphizing way too deep, guys. Watch out.
Do we talk about the priests when I was in Croatia and they like throw holy water on the angles in all of the corners of the house? So if there's ever that way, they keep spiders and bugs and demons away, and because like you have to throw holy water on the angles.
Well, I guess.
Sorry, Raph, angels. What do you think?
No, I was like, cool. I've never been there, and apparently that's their shtick.
Yeah.
Well, there's obviously some correlation with the whole idea of the magics and so on, and just like you said, angels and angles, and who says that these
72 angles?
You put it in this nice way in terms of you cannot see God, but you can see God's plan. Which would mean you can see the angel, you can see the patternings, which we reconstructed probably mainly in old Tartarian architecture, but also, you know, every flower and so on is reproducing these patterns, at least in this level of reality, right?
Right. Euclidean.
So, but then what I'd like to get at, so one thing I have to mention again, everyone check out Michael Tessarian and the whole question about the female Illuminati, because, you know, people always talk about patriarchy.
Taylor Swift.
But then I'm always like, they have mothers too. And I heard at least of 2 cases where people were supposedly in some cults. One was in America, one in Germany. And they were being trained to be the quote unquote mothers of darkness as some kind of high priestly position in, you know,
there's
whatever.
A great episode of Charlie Sheen's Men. What's it called? You know what I'm talking about?
The
men.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Men, two men,
baby.
2.5 men, 2.5 men,
Okay, yeah.
something like that. It's a horrible show, but the guy got AIDS on it, so you gotta be kind of interested. There's an episode where he goes, because he's always doing girls, you know, because that's his like he
tiger
goes
pop
off,
blood.
Yeah, he goes off and he finds like girls involved with the female Illuminati, and like
this was an episode.
Yeah, and like so they're all. Yeah, and he's like,
stuff.
I kind of like, I can't help. They're like, dude, you can't go there. You know what they do to guys? And he's like, yeah, but like, she's hot. So he's doing it, and he's trying not to get like his blood taken or sacrificed, but he's still doing it because he's like really wants the girls.
This is kinky, but don't like bleed me out, please.
Really
this makes me. You mentioned him earlier, and I saw something. Actually, I guess somebody was on Joe Rogan who's like a snake wrangler, and I saw a clip of this the other day. I don't really watch anything like that.
I know
anymore.
some snake people.
This guy follows pythons, and he basically went to this place that was from the 60s or 70s out in Florida, and I guess it was a Cold War facility that was satanic, blah, blah, blah. But Jack Parsons, and how he summoned a fucking female demon and married her, and he blew up. I don't know about his death. Do you know about Jack Parsons' death?
I mean, I've been making so much conjecture on this recently.
It sounds like he fucked an angel, a bad angel.
I want to point out, like, when I say this, like, I have conjecture. Like, so some of this is
That's
not...
everybody.
Yeah, some of this isn't like, but here's the
Thank
deal.
you, Emperor card. It's like there's nothing on the ground here.
Starting before we get to conjecture, let's do like the facts, which are like,
333.
he did say he was dealing with, we talked about earlier, Karanzan, like, so he had a demon he was dealing with, and angels and demons are daemons. Like in Unix, you can look at like these programs, they're designed to do a thing, right? That's what it's the best,
It's
master.
like the Merovingian.
Yeah, it's like, it's the cherub or the seraphim, right? Like it has 6 wings and it does a thing. Like it's designed to do a thing. That's all it's for. And it's constant. Again, like Muhammad meets Gabriel, Mary meets Gabriel. Like Gabriel, Samael are very.
But what does
important.
Gabriel mean in original text? It's like El is God. Gabriel is going to be like annunciation from God or something like that. It's like
right. It's a demon.
Algebra. No.
I don't think Gabriel means algebra.
Look it up. I had a cat named Gabriel. Keep going. So yeah, keep going.
Gabriel meaning. Let's find out.
I can do it faster than you.
God is my strength. There's the strength of God. No, it's the strength of God. So they're saying God is my strength, but really it's it's God's strength is what Gabriel is. And so Samuel is also like one of the architects. And Lucifer's not in the Bible, but there is a Lucifer who, I think, did you bring him up? Lucifer of Caligari. Somebody brought this up.
Last time on the show, yeah. Not me, but yeah.
Yeah, so we were learning about that a bit. So the idea that there was a really important bishop who was trying to be like a pope, essentially. And, the church was like, this guy and his beliefs, we've decided are heretical, because he was saying that the things they were doing were heretical. So if you look into him, he's actually very interesting. He's Saint Lucifer of Caligari. But yeah, eventually he was like blacklisted and canceled, so that we start to see that happen with Erasmus. They call Phosphore Venus, the morning star rising, is the Latin name Lucifer.
Are you saying the sacred texts are just soap operas with code names for modern political problems?
No, it's actually the opposite. I'm saying, like, if you actually read the Bible, like, or again, if you read the Greek, like if you get the cubebible.com, which is like the Midrash and the Hebrew, you can see the Hebrew word back and forth in like the Aramaic translations. Yeah, if you see what it actually says, it says really specific things, but we've kind of said, oh, the snake is Lucifer. Well, most Christians didn't think that for a long time. Most Christians thought it was the foot of Judah. They thought the snake was the foot of the lion, right? Because the Marcionites believe that there's 2 gods, but it's one God. But they believe it's 2 gods, and the Bogomils did too. They're like, Old Testament, angry, jealous God. All of a sudden, there's this new God. And there's like, how do we deal with that? After Origin, they're like, well, it's one God, but it's reflective. It's God that's changed. And they're like, wow, how can we? So they're like, kill those people. But I mean, it's the most practical thing, right? That God creates the universe and is beyond time and is seeing this. And then beyond that, what is God, right? So we talked about that idea of singularity. If you think about something that has gotten to this point with use of angels, that it's able to know all things, be immortal, communicate with itself, it becomes...
It's the kernel, monolithic.
It becomes, it might be that God is more God because of the universe and because of the creation. And
so these are
all thoughts that would get you killed 1,000 years ago, right?
I'm not an atheist, but the way in which you're describing the church history is not too dissimilar than the intro to Manly P's Hall's Secret Teachings of the Ages, which is like schools of thought battle for supremacy of belief. Right? But all I'm saying is, why would we even still play with these games? Like, look, I've blasted off on DMT and seen some shit, so I will. But at some level, it's like, is that culturally real? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's funny because you're coming to a point where you're like, I'm going to spin the bottle with a new bottle. Like, in a sense, you're like, I'm just going to redo the thing. And I've argued with my Nana and stuff. It's like, look, Reformation, Protestant Reformation, and all these things, the wheel gets redone quite a bit. But then I feel like we shouldn't get caught. Listen to me. You shouldn't get caught up in over anthropomorphizing through the lens of limitation of your age, which is kind of hard to do.
Presentism.
Yeah.
Presentism is our own.
You found the perfect cult. You have to remove yourself from the time, space, and the culture they're in.
Yeah, it's called death. So if we just
the creator.
Well, it doesn't have to be death, because the thing is, all right, like, and again, we haven't gotten to the weirdest part yet. Like, we're just talking about some like hokey ideas. But like, if we were to build, if we're talking about the simulation theory, like you're building temples and machines in order to make attention that are like signals, right? So if you're making something for something outside of time to land in your temple, you're basically starting cargo cults to this simulator, which is really all religions are a lot of the time. But you're saying, hey, please show up here, show up now, right? And you figure out places where and you figure out situations how they wouldn't be destroying the rest of the timeline because they're interacting with people that are comfortable with keeping the secret while also knowing it. And then this can be something that eventually can be, set up that's it's a symbol that's saying, hey, look, we want to change. So it's also reflective to the rest of the culture. The rest of the culture is seeing that there's a group saying we want to reach to the future. So it's connecting us to the future. And they're saying, how do we get to the future? Well, we have kids that eventually get educated and they have kids. And so it's also like, and just on a very practical level, it's just very good for society to say, we want to be connected to the future. But the weird thing was, okay, I had this dream, and I think John C. Lilly, who had his dream on the plane, and it was SSI telling him like that they were going to shut down all of the communication systems. And then he talked to Echo right afterward. Echo said like, we're going to send you back 20 minutes in time or something like that. And so he goes back in time. He says he wakes up in the plane and he tells everybody like, I had this crazy dream just now. That there was some problem. And all of a sudden the air thing goes on and says, we're going to divert the flight because there's
some
been
adjustment bureau shit.
Yeah, there's been a crash at the LAX and they shut down the LAX because someone crashed into the tower. But because of something he had said, something happened, people got out of the tower. And so they avoided getting killed at the last second. Like they weren't in the tower when they got hit by the plane. So there was this really interesting thing with that. But
clearly,
I was setting up to do,
if it's true.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, John C. Lilly, though, like he said a lot of weird things, but he wasn't a liar. He was maybe crazy, but he wasn't really a liar. He spent a lot of time doing like real research.
We say things we mean to believe and not be correct.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not saying like lying is intent.
So I love all of the conjectures, but just to be clear, in a practical sense. So you had Revelations, Andreas. And by the way, the Four of Cups I drew, by the way, is 4-4 in the standard numerological calculation. So we have 4, 4, 4. So, Andreas, what is where do you want to take this now, basically? So there's some meme groups. So what would be the real core tenets to understand about this?
Here's my weird dream that I had. So what happened was, and so I'm thinking also like we're talking about all these religious podcasts and everything else, and it's really similar to everyone who's ever started a church's story. They're like, all these people were yelling about this and that, and they all these different beliefs. And I'm dealing with a lot of people like who want to create new beliefs or start a new thing. They're not as interested in the old stuff, and I feel like it's really important to study the old stuff, right? Like that's like the thing is you have to understand where it comes from. You might need to create new symbolism because the knowable Tao is not the eternal Tao, but you still need to know. I'm all about the old stuff first. Like you can't have new ideas without seeing the old ideas, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're just half baking the ideas. So
in 40K terms, you're a remembrancer, and there's a value for that or we'll be lost in the chaos of.
Yeah, you need to have both. You need to have both. But like, I think a lot of time you'll hear people that are kind of pedestrian because they're like, "What if this?" And like, you haven't read, Descartes' thesis on that. Yeah, or you haven't read that. Like, there's a thing on that thought. Some freaking guy spent his whole life and actually 9 other people for generations after him obsessing over just that thought. There are people with PhDs on just that thought, and you're thinking now that you just came up with it. Like that kind of bothers me sometimes. But I mean. I had this dream and I'm thinking about how I know all these cool people. Like I've been initiated into so many priesthoods. I've been baptized more often than I've showered. Like I was in the Mormons. I got a Yanoi from the Brahmin priesthood. I was initiated the Brahmin priesthood. So I've got connections to all these priesthoods. And then I'm thinking about it. And I know people like who are in Nigeria, right, who need to reestablish their priesthood because they're in a place where it's like illegal now to be their own religion. And people in Bolivia, right, Quechua, and people in Paraguay, who are like the children of like the prophet of their church, right? Not just Seth in the Utah, but like people in Tibet. Like I know people in Nepal, right, that are like they're the reincarnated Lama, right? It's just too many people like that. So anyway, I'm sleeping for a second because I don't have enough time. And it's just like, I go to sleep and I wake up like very quickly. But I have this dream. I'm like in the desert. I think I'm in Missouri. It's like probably because I'm thinking about Mormonism, granted, it's all influenced, I'm sure, by my experiences more than by divine stuff a lot of the time, but I'm thinking about, and I wave my hand and I wave my hand in the dream, and all of a sudden these doves plant lines, and then 12 of like gold seeds, and then 12 olive trees grow up. And then
What are you
there's
laughing
this
about?
well, because it's just like at the time also I'm like, what the heck does this mean? You know, like whatever, like olive trees. And it
Visions
didn't
aren't meant to
seem
be interpreted right away. Just
it didn't
absorb
well,
it.
but like
No.
honestly, olive trees are so specific.
Hmm.
And it was because the day right before it, Adam on Base Day F, and we were talking, Adam Krigler was like, I just got a bunch of Greek olives. And I love him. And he's just posting pictures of olives and he's eating. So I've got the symbolism in my head. I'm like, okay, well, weird. I'm dreaming about olives now because of Adam. And so for like a week, I'm like, I don't know like what that's about. But then I'm talking to Jacob, and he's reading from his Revelation book, and Seth talking, and I mentioned like, I just had this dream about that. And they're like, oh, what? Like, don't you know what that means? And I'm like, what? I'm supposed to like, unite the 12 tribes or something like that? They're like, no, it's like you're supposed to do, and they've got their interpretation, which is like, it's, I think, what the prophet does to build the temple or something like that. And it's like literally something from Jacob's thing, like that they didn't do that they needed to do. Like, is that like I had the dream that I did the thing and it just happened. But like for me,
What I think of Lost with Jacob.
But for me, what was interesting was like I connected it with the 12 like tribes, and I'm like, I don't know if it really is 12, but I'm thinking like all these people I know that are they're the thing, they're the thing from their tribe, and these are all divided tribes, but they're not because I know them. And so it feels like that's the thing that's the most important thing.
This is what my private message to you about the other day on Team Rabbit Hole stuff. It's like, bro, we've got all these like ideas and people and stuff. You're taking it a step further because I think you actually want to concretize a religion possibly, but
I want to connect the tribes. I think you've got priesthoods from Africa that need to know priesthoods from like,
you mean like Christian
Paraguay.
Priesthoods, or
no, I mean like
not. If when you're ready to do that, Andreas, again, to be practical, it's a 4 episode after all. I can give you some good leads on that. I know quite a few people who've been to quite a few elders and so on, and are in good connection with different people. And definitely they all should connect because, need to.
I think there's certain. I think interfaith dialogue. So I'm trying to do these interfaith dialogues, and obviously,
but it's not at the Vatican. There's a difference because.
Well, I'm trying to get some Catholics. And
so it's the anti-pope. Now I understand.
I got a lot of people that were former Catholics, which is interesting. But I think like the modern Catholics are having a hard time, and then trying to get the SSPX guy to join. I think that they're having a hard time to
make them join. Start having little meetups and have people experience your ideas firsthand, and that's what a culture starts off of.
Right. Well, we're trying.
Space is happening. Clearly, people show up and do things and do whatever. But at some level, especially given the zeitgeist, look around us. It's an emperor card time. It's about finding the people you would have fucking hang out with at great culture.
Take back the axe, and what can it be about other than some syncretism,
Well, it's interesting because I think, I tried to do my interfaith dialogue. I think some people went into it assuming I was going to turn it into like a debate about which faith was right. And so there was some defensiveness when it first started. And then as they went on, they're like, oh, no, it's Andreas. He's trying to figure out like what the common denominators are and all this stuff. Oh, this is so different than I expected. So like, I think that's the thing I was really excited about was when talking to some Mormons who believed in some weird stuff about baptism of the dead, and then talking to African native tribes do rituals in the spirit, in the flesh, for the spirit. There are people that are spirit beings. They're dead. They don't have a body anymore, right? Or they're never dead. And you have to do in the flesh, in the material world, you have to do your magic or your ceremonies for those in the spirit. So it's like, it's super like, it jives. There's a huge connection between this and that. And there are a lot of other rituals that we should know probably about what they're for, why they exist. And we can see like how things change. Because even looking at the Veda used to be about animal sacrifice. So we can see like the Jews, the animal sacrifice. There's an ending to animal sacrifice in Christianity, arguably, right? The same thing with Judaism, arguably, without the temple, but they still want to do the red heifer sacrifice. So looking at the Veda, they have like a rice cake. The rice cake is this Eucharist thing, and we see that used by the Thelemics and by the Wiccans and by other groups, but also by the Christians. The Christians use a wafer that's essentially like a non-leavened cake. So, I mean, that's supposed to be representing an animal sacrifice. It's representing the Christ. So it's interesting. Like, there's a lot of these connections between all of the functions of magic performed by the priesthood. And I think we don't think about that because so much of the religion's about like trying to just like militant Christianity, let's convert sinners or something like that. And I think
It's not that simple though.
It shouldn't be.
You have a culture, and then you have wings on a culture. So it's like there's a hippie wing, and that's the mystics, and they want to sit around and like contemplate the flower of being. And then you have the militant wing who says, I'm Peter and I have a knife, and there's a dude coming up to my Jesus, and I'm going to chop off his fucking ear. In fact, here's one better. Let's go out and chop off people's ears preemptively, preemptive strikes. And that's kind of what crusades are. So it's tricky because basically, in a sense, nothing new under the sun. I don't think, and I don't want to discredit you or anything. I have a feeling that we're all kind of coming to this place where it's meta aware of narrative, and we're starting to realize our place is changing. And this is where I think I get tripped up a little, because Raphael, at least he used to be, I haven't talked to him in 6 months. So it's like, it sounded like he was against Bashar or aliens now. I don't know his ontology, but usually, how would I even put it? Looking to the past is helpful, but then defining our language through the past becomes limiting, although it's unavoidable. That's why DNA is a perpetuational thing. It's not reinventing itself utterly. It's mutating over time.
That's
so the
thing.
mutational.
Are we so sure about that even? You heard about this idea, for example, if you apply the right voltage to seeds, I have to look this up again, like vegetable seeds, they somehow strangely revert to what we would suppose is their original form. So I wouldn't presuppose that genetics is a linear process at all. There's many more factors involved here, if that's what you're referring to.
Well, we have a lot of adenoviral mutations, right? And so I think that's a big thing about xChurch.
Storyline here.
So a thing that really, the thing is, like, a lot of people, I just want to get people.
Cross-pollination.
I want to get people that are dissatisfied with their other.
You'll find many of those.
Their other products.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, this is why
provide them with a better product, right? So if they're dissatisfied with the other product, their religion, they can find xChurch. And the Mormon transhumanists I found really interesting. A lot of Mormons aren't into transhumanism, but the Mormon transhumanist movement, it's appealing to even atheists. It is dangerous. You should be afraid, because what we're going to do is establish Zion on earth. I mean, the idea of reaching all the goals isn't impossible. Just do it.
But heads must roll, I guess.
They don't have to roll. The heads will continue to roll until we do something about it, right? If you end aging, it's done. Do it. End problems, fix them. We can take, and it's not that difficult to look at something and to remove these sequences which are ruining our natural DNA, because that's all it is. We have a natural
God
DNA
put us on Earth, and the sun gives us cancer, so it's God's will. I mean, who knows what's all going on here? It's a big old magical mystery tour.
That's American Cancer Research Foundation.
According, and again, like, this is a bad reference, but like, you go to Exodus, it says that that God didn't make death, right? And a lot of the mythology for a lot of religions is that we were immortal until we left the garden, or until we ate the fruit, or until we I think with a Hopi, it's like we left. We were supposed to stay underground, and we came out a day early. There's all these little there's a lot of these little things like that. Raccoons
you could be
also
grounded, or we could take your eternal soul. We'll make you mortal.
I mean, so like, mortality is interesting to me, because the idea that we are supposed to be mortal, I don't know if it's necessarily true, and I don't think it necessarily has to be the way of things. And a lot of these, like the Rastafarians, are all about becoming immortal. That's why Bob Marley didn't want to remove his toe when he had melanoma, because he thought amputation meant no immortality.
Just to be exact again, are we talking about physical immortality? Because it's also another concept in some belief systems. Even people would say, I have to build my light body so I can transcend and live on, or whatever.
Right. I think Rudolf Steiner had the balance. So some people were like, for a long time, it was like left or right, good or evil, and I think that's a wrong way to look at it. Maybe this isn't more right. Maybe
Yang, not left, not right, but forward.
Well, the Steiner model is, on the left you have Ahriman, on the right you have Lucifer, so you got to walk the middle path. You can fall off both ends.
Easily. You can fall off both ends, because and I actually think that maybe we should be doing it the opposite. It might be heterodoxy. It might be that we need to understand, because what do these symbols represent, right? He's saying Ahriman. Ahriman is this Ayurvedic and Zoroastrian idea of dark, chaotic darkness and separation. So it's this sort of voidness, but in a lot of ways that's not so bad, right? Because in a lot of ways, just for a second, like, we're talking about the void which Lucifer comes from. Because it's in the darkness, she said, let there be light, and she separates herself from light. So out of the matrix, out of Sophia, it might be Ahriman's connected to Sophia in some ways. All right, just saying. Now looking at Lucifer, on the other hand, is very different than Ahriman. Lucifer is complete and whole. Lucifer is architecture and architect. Lucifer is material and hypermaterial. Lucifer is perfection of symmetry and form. There's a lot of reasons why you can say Lucifer is evil, but at the end of the day, you also have to say, well, Lucifer is very beautiful. Lucifer is really good at making music. Lucifer is the best at worshiping God when Lucifer is worshiping God. Like it's all true. So it's really.
Jim Henson had a great line from fucking Rainbow Connection, and he was a hippie dude. He did Dark Crystal. We've had an episode on that, Raphael, right? So it's like, this is not a guy who's like soft selling materialism or something.
No, and he worked with the MI6 actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's word. But he has a line where it's like, somebody said something and somebody believed it, and look where that's gotten us so far. And we're even playing around with, you're like, Lucifer isn't Lucifer, but then we're now playing with the ideas of myth in such a way that the original evidencation isn't even validating for it.
If Lucifer doesn't exist, then what we believe about Lucifer is all we have about Lucifer. So the egregore is all that's left, and then that is
only if you believe in it. It's
but if a lot of people do, then it doesn't matter if you do or don't, because you're surrounded in people that are affected by their subconscious.
Is this the moral of the Matrix? Just because other people are on a program doesn't mean you have to be.
You can re-hack the program, but you have to like show it to people so they can break it down and they can figure out what they actually believe about a thing.
Okay, so you want to know something funny? I just had my there was something so Jim Henson, the reason I quoted him was because even if we were to say, oh my God, look, because there's really good texts if people are into Christianity, like The Lost World of Adam and Eve and The Lost World of Genesis are scholarly texts about the literal, first century Jewish thinking or what early Jewish thinking on these things, and it's taking it seriously. So if people want to do that, it's like there's chaos, order, disorder, and chaos basically. So like, what does the snake represent? This gets into Petersonian archetypology. The reason I'm saying anything right now is because we're playing with ideas as though they were true, which lends credence to the participatory feelings of it. I mean, I have a feeling, let me put it this way. If somebody who's like, I'm a ghost hunter, they're going to probably have a whole lot of paranormal experiences because they're setting themselves up within the framework of their beliefs to experience this. Now, it doesn't guarantee it and it does not negate it fully. It's just you allow the language in and the program kind of runs with certain syntax.
Yeah. I would argue it's probably better to like expect miracles.
An Egyptian high priest kicked out of the fucking culture, who was a Jew, so the story goes, Moses wrote the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, which Mormonism is fucking around with. Judaism is rooted in. Abrahamic religions clearly are all stemming from this pharaonic thing, as Raphael would say. But it's like, and I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not an atheist. I've met Egyptian deities on DMT. But just because someone says it and we believe it doesn't make it true. It's real. It's not true. And I'm kind of getting to this place where it's like, you're really definitely setting yourself up to ride some waves, but like, okay, so full extent, like back simulation, it doesn't matter. Like all is one, holographic multiversism, kind of what Raphael used to get off on in our podcasting for the first 300 episodes, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Then isn't it better to focus on miracles than ghosts or on
nothing's better? It's both. So it's like what you know. Well, it's tricky because the conscious mind will focus on what it can understand and then play with those ideas. But there's
miracles are supernatural, right? Supernaturalis is this idea that it's beyond our explanation. I think looking for things that are beyond your explanation is good. Then
and
you
the
can
Renaissance perspective was beyond our imagination, and then all of a sudden we evolved it.
Science happened because of miracle. Searching for miracle and looking for miracle led to understanding.
Mutation occurred. Mutation over a long period of time, given culture, allows for these belief structures to even have the gravitas they do. These egregores run around like American gods.
That's another.
Believe in them.
That's another thought altogether. Whether or not the bicameral mind evolved, which I think is a very interesting idea. Like the presupposition that like mushroom Christ story, the Eucharist being the idea of the mushroom Eucharist. Like to be fair, like you look at Czech art and you look at Chinese art and you look at there's a lot of precedent for mushrooms in Christ and this idea that people in Buddha and in Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, and even Saint Anthony, saying he
That doesn't make it
rejects
true. It just makes it a real effect of these psychedelics. And I'm not a
that
materialist expert.
the idea though that at one point it was almost there's certain kinds of people that are had genetic dispositions to constantly be tripping, and you bred them, like they became a caste.
That's what the Jewish people are, possibly.
Well,
Peterson's whole thing was they have a deviation in their basically
right.
brain.
That's also, and Seth brought this up
for
recently
psychopaths.
because Seth, being the grandnephew of Joe Smith, he thinks that he has a genetic disposition for seeing things or something, and maybe that's and he's taking it from a very atheist perspective, which I think is like really kind of sad, right? Because if you could take the opposite approach, is I have something divine revelation, and you're no disorder, mental disorder. That's what we're gonna call it. I just want to say
it's an aberration, a mutation of some kind. So we can probably say that clearly. But I
see, because disorder is such a it's not a nice way of saying
baggage. It's got baggage.
Just say chaos, say Eris, say discordian or something.
Or Dada. It's like I'm a Dada psychology Dadaist.
Something that really like shows you love chaos. I don't know, because if you don't love chaos, then you're gonna hurt from it. I think it's the sad thing from it. But
that's
okay.
the lesson, though. It's like, look, the Sith exist, but don't. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt. The Sith exist. Don't fuck with the Sith energy, but don't say it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but so wait, revelation. Earlier we were saying something about like genetic disposition to revelation. I forget.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, the Hopis can maybe see things because their tribes.
Oh, okay. So here's the deal with the bicameral mind. So you look at dolphins, and dolphins sleep, but they don't sleep, right? So they have like unicameral sleep, so they can be awake all the time. They kind of sleep like cats a little bit, but really they're awake all the time because one brain can be sleeping, one hemisphere of the brain can be sleeping, while the other hemisphere is awake. So dolphins are just constantly moving around. And this is maybe the way hunter-gatherers might have been, except for humans that had more cross synapses. I'm not saying I believe this per se, but this is the belief, and they taught this in school, and I just figure people should know it's like a theory. It's a pretty decent hypothesis. And that as mushrooms or certain kinds of nootropics that had the same sorts of neurochemicals, neurohormones, like mushrooms use the same neurohormones that we do, started becoming more popular in fetishes and rites of taboo. So in becoming a man, you would have epigenetic rituals, right? So you become a man, you don't just go through puberty, you take this mushroom drink or something like that. So it might have been at a certain point that maybe a few thousand years ago, people started having more and more synapse crossing all the time, to the point that they didn't even need mushrooms to have that. And again, I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, but some people have pointed to the idea that like maybe Moses had this divine inspiration that he could only describe as holistic awareness, right, of God, right? Because it's just, wow, I get it. It's like I get everything. It's like I'm thinking all at once kind of a thing. And people get that. But maybe we get that less today than we did in the 60s and 50s. Because in the 20s, 30s, 40s, it seems like in the last couple hundred years, it was very common for people to just have mental capacity to think of all things, right? And it's maybe lost since the last 20 years. I think people are starting to devolve, and they're starting to become more reactionary because of first-person shooters and things like that.
There's definitely a point to that. On the recent talk I had with Endgame Islam, we talked about the whole things that David talks about, and different concepts also in the Quran. And one thing, I cannot reference it properly, unfortunately, is there is some idea about like some light entering your brain and then coming out the other side. And we were also, or at least I was making the connection to this whole brain hemisphere synchronization idea. So of course, the whole question bicameral, unicameral sleep could be interesting. Maybe there is a way to reach that as a human. Could be interesting to experience. But the main point really being this connection, because our topic back then was about hierarchy and whether you would blindly follow some kind of dogma or priest, or whether you can be self-directed. And the way I understand it is that if you actually have both hemispheres activated, you have a more quote unquote direct revelation of God, or however you want to call it. And then you would naturally fall off of some pharaonic hierarchical system. So that's the way I'd frame it.
I don't think it's that heretical to say that. So the idea that your mind and your
body... Are you
body,
saying it's not heretical?
I'm saying, I think, it makes enough sense, because if your mind and your body are like an antenna, and having this perfect transceiver working properly is part of that deal, it might be that we're all becoming prophetic, or in the way that people thought.
Your sons will dream dreams and have visions, and there will be a one world religion, and all this. It's happening in front of us.
No,
But
but
that's where it
because the
gets tricky
thing
to
is,
me, 'cause
in terms of a
it's
religion, you can always set up a new dogma, set up a new structure, a new system, a new cult, a new
the new boss,
organization.
same as
But
the old
the real
boss.
question would be, and maybe that's the X in the end, in a positive way, how to direct people or assist them in having this direct revelation themselves, you know?
Wait,
in
is
a
the X your religion? The Xirtus religion?
Well,
Is
it's
that what's going on here?
xChurch, no?
Yeah.
Well, I
basically.
think
So-
Musk beat you to it with the
So
Twitter switch,
basically,
but
how
okay.
Also,
to lead
I don't think so.
people
He time
towards
traveled, fucked you.
how
Yeah.
to lead people towards being able to lead themselves. That's the only thing in terms of religion that really seems
Yes.
appealing to me.
Hold on. You know how I get a T thing and I read it? It says your inner self is your inner guide. That's the goddamn
Oh
point.
boy.
I mean, sync. It's
Well,
like,
you know,
look, we
and
can if we want to be
I'm
monkeys around the
careful of
campfire.
that.
Hold on,
I'm
Andres.
careful
If we
of
want to
that,
be
though.
if we want to be monkeys around the campfire and compare stories and then fight over the guy who says a story we don't like and all this shit,
Yeah.
that's pretty much Raphael's going down this whole like
Right. No, yeah, but I'm
Abrahamic Muslim thing.
well, and
then
Aleister
you're like,
Crowley, right? Aleister Crowley is the
Mormons!
Aleister Crowley. No, because like they are Abrahamic. The difference is Aleister
I
Crowley.
know you're fighting over like peaches, like
Yeah,
pronunciations.
it's nothing. Yeah, the real difference. Well, no, it's just like expanded text. But the idea of Aleister Crowley is to abandon the law because the law is a lie, right? And that's a question: how much of the law is true?
The Emperor card would say not all of it. Don't fucking
Not, yeah,
go there.
start
Don't
start
fly
with
too
that
high.
because the other thing is like how much of it's untrue is probably even a better question because there's a lot of stuff that's not. There's lots of that is true still in the law. I mean,
Well, that's why Jesus spoke in parables. It's like this isn't true, but it's fucking real. So pay attention.
right. And I keep coming back to this idea that Jesus answered only 7 of the 100 questions, but he asked 1,000 because
Is that a
he's
Mormon
teaching.
thing? I've never heard
No,
that bullshit.
it's just it's something I found out recently. Looking into it, Jesus was a critical thinking teacher. He taught people how to critically think instead of how to memorize facts. Maybe that's not completely true. If you look at the Qumran document and the parchments of the Gospel of Thomas and you see his quotes, but the way it's presented, I think that's more the case that he was trying to evade saying answers to questions that was going to get him killed. And instead he was like, look, that's not the way to think about things. Think of it more like this, ask a question like this, and then that'll make you think about questions differently. And I think that's really that's a big part of what we need. So like there's a mystery school, there's, group outreach that helps people. That's all the same. But priesthood is different to me because priesthood, I like this idea that it does come from a sense of authority, not from man. And I think that that's a big problem with any church that's like, you got to be 80 to run it. Like, I think the best ones are run by 14-year-olds. Like, it sounds like that's clearly the person who's getting the divine revelation. And maybe there's going to work with that. It might be more
bands, Andreas, because people are getting that fucking divine revelation in their teenhoods.
It might be loose to say like 14-year-olds should run things, but like I think 14 or fight. I've always believed that in a sense about other things. Like the people who run the country should be 14. I think after 35, you should be forced to retire. So
look at Zach De La Rocha or whatever. He used to rage against the machine, probably from 13 to whatever, 40, 35.
Yeah.
And now he's like a politician. He's doing the work, Emperor card in the ground. He's not just shouting at, his guitarist buddy, who's a Harvard kind of cool, mixed race dude. I forget his name off the top of my head now. Fuck, this is going to piss me off. I'm a guitarist. What's his name?
From which
Tom
band?
Morello. Tom Morello.
Oh, yeah.
He's a fucking stormtrooper on a guitar. Anyway, he makes some serious noises, but he is not giving up. I mean, I can't speak highly eloquently on his political activism, but clearly the singer for Rage Against the Machine has gone into efficacy of belief. He is a person of the people now in the political system.
He's obsessed with he made people get vaccinated for his concert. It was sad.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Tom Morello?
Yeah.
That was like the other dude too, Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
And this is the bifurcation of the Dolores Cannon thing, but whatever. It's like, do you want to be Death Star or do you want to be Ewok Village?
I think the point though of the priesthood to me is like you've got like, so I don't know, also growing up around Rosicrucians. So the Rosicrucians have all of these.
I'm not surprised you've come out the way you have, by the way.
Yeah,
you have been dipped in every fucking color Easter egg dipping.
It's true.
Dye.
Yeah, as a baptism, as an Easter egg. Yeah. So, but
that makes differentiation of color very difficult, Andres.
No, I'm Little Miss Lady Rainbow, bro. Like everybody else they think they're this
particular. The white.
Everybody thinks they're this particular hue. It blows my mind. Yeah,
all the colors at once. Saruman the white.
You read the book.
You fool. You gave up it. You
Good job.
do that shit.
Illiterate fellow over here, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, so I think that we need a priesthood, or we need 12 tribes at least. You have to have different kinds of priesthoods, and you have to have a priestesshood.
Hold on. So the 144, That's just 12 times 12 is 144. It's
Yeah.
what you're saying is what we're experiencing. Hey, guess what, kids? We're here. It's like, hey, we have zodiacal awareness, and then if you multiverse that,
Yeah.
you get it. You get the fucking promised land.
There's
We're there.
specific things that priesthoods do though. So like the Rosicrucians have a thing where it's like the keys, and I like this idea. Like the keys is you got the keys from the saints, and they perform miracles. Miracles are supernatural. Then they hand the keys off, so it goes back, right? So the ceremonies are handed off as the keys. So it's not so much like Burning Man or like it's all right when they're doing this creation of new things, and it's important to update things, but there's something about the ancient thing that's carried on, and you don't want to lose that. And we're at a very particular point in history where either all of these things are about to be lost or they're going to be saved. And I think this is the way to save them, is to take them seriously, to adapt them with atheists who believe in science and with metaphysicists who believe in
Mormon?
spirit. I'm xChurching right now, super hard.
I don't know how they think about Jesus, but he basically said, "Don't sweat it more than most things." He's like, "Fear not, fear not, fear not." It's like, so when we're like, "Oh
He
my
said
God,
a lot of things. He didn't just say
so much
that.
crazy." Okay, but if
He also said he came with a sword to divide families.
Oh, Ace of Swords on the bottom of the
Yeah,
deck.
he did
I
a lot
come
of
here with a
stuff.
new perspective, is what he said.
Yeah.
I come here with a
I
perspective
think
that's gonna
lazy-
divide people.
I think lazy Jesus is kind of a dangerous philosophy, but I also don't think that he spent the whole time waiting to die. And I think that also changed his perspective. He's like, dude, it's chill. It's chill. And he's like, wait, it's not chill? Oh no. Oh gosh, these people suck. And you look at John the Baptist and what like was already going on before Jesus. Like John the Baptist is teaching people about atonement throughout washing instead of killing animals, because he's saying, look, you really
He's
need
updating the
to
map.
you have to get over your piety, and you have to like realize the Armageddon's coming. And so
He was
there's a movement coming right before this, and then the churches broke up. I'm sorry, the temples collapsed. Israel's broke, so everyone's sent out of Israel. So you all of a sudden are adapting this to Hermetic thought, to Vedic thought in India under St. Thomas, in North Africa to Berber thought, in Spain under Paul. So everyone's getting their own version of this, and then they're saying, yeah, Christ is all about his blood sacrifice. But I really don't think that's what it was about. Like for most Christians, it wasn't that. And you look at the Cathars, they went on to the 19th century. I think in 1780s, the French were still burning them at the stake. So for
it's like anything.
how many? But yeah, but this is like 800 years, and everyone says, "Oh, these people like only Christians only believe that they have to drink the blood of Christ to live forever." No, that's not what a lot of Christians do not believe.
Do you hear what the problem is? Exclusive belief systems, exclusivity, language, and belief.
We got 144 people watching now, by the way.
We're the new church kids. You guys are all going to baptize. No, this is the trip. I mean, it's the point. McKenna gets this. Marshall McLuhan, I asked you the other day if you're into him. You didn't answer. He's a Catholic, so you could jam on his cylinders probably, but because he's thinking that the world is the Christ made electric or something like that.
He's very Chardinian. Yeah, he believes that we are. He thinks
if
that
that's the case, though, we don't have to sweat it. I mean, it doesn't mean
that's
don't
the
work.
opposite of. I think that's. And then McKenna died, by the way. Right?
Yeah, I know.
So I was of brain rot, by the way. But I would say that with McKenna's understanding, again, go back to the idea of like the phenomenon of man and the divine milieu and the contemplation of Christ it's a Gnostic interpretation, maybe, but it's a very Ignatius Loyola spiritual exercise based thing. So I've
always loved it.
Christ is this perfect incarnation. We ought to be more like him. If we all were like him, evolution would progress better. I mean, that's his basic thought.
Right? Yeah, what would Neo do if you can be Neo and you could? He's like, I leave it up to you.
But if
the revolution is in your hands,
it's
will
like
you join?
If everybody gets out of the old way of thinking, and everyone has all these synapses and are able to fast and make pure thoughts, not from parasites, then the world will make a lot more sense. I think that's what Chardin was saying. And that if everyone did that every generation, sin would be a thing of the past, because, and also covenants wouldn't matter as much, because love would be people understood the intention behind covenants. They would love each other. And so love would actually transcend, which would be the actual covenant of Christ. So there's a lot of reasons why Chardin was talking about evolution through becoming Christ-like, but also as a Catholic, he was suppressed from talking about this stuff. He wasn't allowed to talk about
potato.
He did have the contemplation of Sophia as the Mother Mary, and he focused on Mother Mary as the Sophia because he wasn't allowed to talk about Sophia.
Yeah,
right?
Mary's not in my bag of tricks much.
Well, Mary's super important. Like but the thing is, she's more important because of our lack of the Divine Heavenly Mother and Sophia. And the fact that when you talk to a Protestant and they read the Bible and they don't know that Proverbs is in the first person written by wisdom herself, and that they look at you like you're crazy.
Hold
when
on,
you
do
say
you
that.
believe that it was written by the finger of Sophia? Like
No,
this
no,
gets
like
into the,
no, but the
bibliography.
character, but it's like it's written in
Oh
first
yeah, I am
person.
wisdom. Yeah,
You know,
I
yeah,
get,
yeah.
But
You got
that's
still, it's probably a dude. But also,
yeah.
what was the other one? Luke is probably written by a chick, right? Luke is
I
probably
don't know.
written by Paul's apostle, who was a female. And so it's so much of the Bible was written later. Daniel's written, I think, 100 years after everything else in the Old Testament. It's like 100.
It's like one of these things. Do we think Buddha really only lived on a grain of fucking rice a day for a long time? Probably not. Probably not, guys. Sorry, but I mean,
And
but
if he was super fat, I mean, for a while, he could be fasting.
right. He just touched the cat and got a rice thing every day.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I think we're kind of coming. It's one of the. It's not bad tricky, but it's like all the ambitions of thought and belief are hitting a liminal kind of place, like a glass ceiling. That's what Israel and Palestine is, right? Where it's basically people fundamentally believing different things about reality, but they're occupying the same fucking reality. Becomes real hairy when the two tribes of the monkeys want the same banana tree. Go watch Chimp Empire on Netflix, 4 episodes. It will change. I mean, it will make you at least sympathetic to our.
I'm not a political pundit, but watch the Animal Planet. Yeah.
No, I'm I'm not an evolutionary material Darwinist. But how I sound today compared to y'all.
Yeah, we really forced you into a corner.
No, it's like I pulled the Emperor card. It is what it is. This has to be grounded. These
like
ideas have to be.
Lamarckian and Chardin. It's like this is the thing when people talk about evolution, they think about the worst example. Like Chardin taught actual evolution. I would say Darwin never taught evolution. Like he had ideas. He had ideas about mutation, but he didn't really understand it nearly as he's very plebeian compared to like Chardin or Lamarck. And Lamarck's plebeian compared to Chardin. Like Chardin,
I would love to see Chardin's opinion of Chimp Empire on Netflix because it's literally gang warfare, and you see how we are, and then you look at whatever Ukraine or Palestine and stuff. It's like, hey, guess what? This is what the microwave looks like when you leave it on for a few thousand years.
Jim, I would say I have some interesting stuff I'd say about Josephus because he wrote a lot of stuff before the version you've read, right? Like, so the version that's popular has supplanted in it like parts where like, and he was most surely the son of God, Jesus, and
he had a crooked back.
You can see very easily like where they added stuff to Josephus, and you can see who actually. I think I've got a doc that talks about who added to Josephus all of like the militant Christian quotes, but Josephus is pretty important. It doesn't mean he was right about everything, but if you compare it, like again, like this whole thing with Akhenaten, if you start comparing Freud's Xirtus to Josephus, like there's always something between the veil. Sorry, you were gonna say, Jim.
I wasn't saying shit.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I just do what I do. If a question comes to mind, I'll ask it. It seems almost like we're same as it ever was, right? It's like we're in the same place where it's like how much imagination does one want to play with, and it has to be grounded or else you're fucking retarded, basically.
Yeah, bring in as many people, bring as many grounded people as possible to hold you while you're trying to fly. Yeah.
A zodiac or whatever, a constellation, if you want to put it that way, of 12 for your vision, or a zodiac and a real thing, or 12 tribes of Israel, 12 fucking apostles, or the Knights of the Round, or whatever. These constellatory things are perspectively relative to each other. So it's like Judas is Scorpio and John is Cancer or whatever. These are like the twins, the brothers, Zebedee. Yes, Gemini, the twins. You get, in a sense, the imagination is throwing up on itself infinitely. And right, Raphael's original presupposition was like, well, it's a multiverse and everything is all awesome. And I'm like, I couldn't get into that because I'm so committed to the chess game we're on. But if the only way we're going to walk on water, that is possible if you can start realizing that Tron Legacy World isn't all there is. But
one of my versions of hell is seeing who you could have been, right? Like the person you could. So I think that like the multiverse has some weight to it in the sense that like you might be left behind in this timeline if this timeline is not the right timeline. Like you might end up, I think it's like
I thought you were promoting the Christian books.
Like I think Narakas are like our idea of hell isn't really Christian, right? It's like Narakas are a Vedic and Buddhist concept. So
the underworld was the subconscious at some point. They didn't have any language for anything else. So it's like when we go to the underworld, you're dreaming. In a sense, there's no semantic difference in a brain scan between waking and dreaming life. We ascribe the meaning. We ascribe the meaning. That's important. But that doesn't mean there's no meaning. Like it's Emperor card shit.
Yeah. I think like the charter, like there's teleologic meaning. So like when something gets out of something is what they find meaning in it. So you get value from a mustard tree from it giving you mustard. So you're like, that's why you call it that. Otherwise, you wouldn't name it that. You know, you're only really obsessed with the thing it does for you.
And it's 144 right now. That comes to the podcast. I almost called today's episode Super Cemetery, which is an Arcade Fire song. Not only do you look like Win Butler a little, his cousin or something, but what we're talking about is we're all coming to the fucking same rabbit hole or whatever you want to call it, the same fucking conscious void space.
They got him while he's in the void space. Do.
Through the portal.
Yeah, I think you know, we need. I like Seth because I like the idea of bringing atheists to reinvent like the perspective, because you don't want to get trapped in a religion that is based on belief per se. But I think belief is part of, you know, just accepting of the variable. I think the main thing is the mirror. He's coming back. No, he's frozen. So I think the main thing though is like the priesthood idea is bigger than like a religion to me, because most people are just trying, when they build a religion, to just get people to join. And I don't think that's really what this is about. Like let's do things to help people around the world, regardless of what they believe. Like, that's not really important to me. Whether they get converted doesn't really matter. That's not why you help people. But like, if people are interested in why we're doing that and like why we'd want to make the world a better place, then yeah, there'd be a select, that's what the religion's for. It's like saints. Like the original Christians weren't called Christians, they were called saints. You know, so like the idea is like, to join, you have to perform 3 miracles or receive 3 miracles. It's not an easy thing. And it has to do, I mean, it's easy enough if God wants you to do it, or if something supernatural happens,
It's a game you want to play,
or if you're a scientist who invents something. Yeah, there's supernatural. There's ways to cheat the system, but like,
I think me and Rafa have switched spots ontologically. I think he sounds more hardline, and I've come to a place of like openness. It's funny. It's funny to me.
I think you're presupposing too much, Jim, but it's fine.
Well, you're the one the other day who said, I don't believe him. Sure. I got cut off because goddamn
that doesn't mean anything.
Okay, true.
There's multiple layers.
So it was going to be a Super Cemetery episode. I was going to name it that, right? Whatever. But we called it A Rose by Any Other Name. And that's kind of what we're getting at. We're just like, look, we're all just shouting at each other about the same fucking thing. And then it gets into personalities of like, do I like dominating and winning and being seen well? Do I like being chill and fucking
That's what we need the xChurch for, Jim. Haven't you gotten it?
Well, I think maybe my future self is already a member. I don't know. But yeah, it seems we're part of me thinks
maybe
this is
one
a
of the
very helpful conversation. Well, obviously, but the point is, fuck that. At the same time, I look when the
right. That's the thing. That's what I just said. We're not here to like force other people.
That's part of the attitude, Jim. That's why your future self is already part of it.
Yeah.
The brothers Zebedee, the Thunder Brothers, right? Jesus' disciples. They've been with Jesus for like 3 years, and I'm just gonna go with the mythos of the Bible is accurate, and we can trust.
Like, I think what we should do, like, first thing, like, if people ask, like, what do I believe? Like, I believe we should like cure like diseases. You know, I believe we should like help. Yeah, right. Like, I believe we should help people not need pharmaceutical drugs with OCD or with Parkinson's disorder. We should teach people how to deal with Tourette syndrome. We should help kids who don't have adults in their lives. Yeah, I believe in that.
In that apartment too long, my friend. Let's get on the streets and make some shit happen.
Right. And so like the thing is, it's funny to me because like I like that about religions when they focus on those things. And then so when they get deeper into it, it's like, well, you don't have to do any of that stuff in ours, because our thing is more ambiguous. But if you were interested in doing those things, we do have those things, because we were talking to all of the priesthoods from all of the world.
It's like there's a Hufflepuff. It's Hogwarts. Hogwarts has sex. Dumbledore doesn't have to have all the answers necessarily.
I like the Jesuits. The Jesuits went around the world originally and just got everyone else's religious icons. Let's do what they did, but before they got crazy.
Do it in a bit of a different way. But what I'm thinking of, couldn't it be said that the true virtuous, the display of virtue or actual religion is in action? And that's where probably you could get indigenous elders for sure, but probably also many of the non-corrupted leaders of any other religion to agree upon and say, okay, we all want to do, for example, charity, or we all agree on this and that thing.
It would piss off a lot of the lot of the Pauline Christians and a lot of Pentecostals, like they're going to think this is super evil because Because, well, I'm just explaining why. Because I think people are like, why? Why would they think that this is evil?
Look,
We're trying to
if a
help
monkey
people.
doesn't want to get in the boat that's leaving,
I just want to
they get
explain
put 'em on
though,
the road.
like the idea that we're saying, hey, we're gonna make a group here that's all about helping people because we believe helping people is important. That's not what everybody believes. Some people believe that Jesus was murdered so that you don't have to do anything. And it
Who
really
believes that?
upsets and it really upsets them when I say this stuff.
Is there a
that-
name for this? Because I heard this and even real life examples, and I was like, "What? How could someone even think that?"
Arhat.
Way?
That's
What's
I
the
argue.
term? What's
What
the term?
scares
Arhat.
me? What scares me is
Arhat,
I think
Raphael.
most people who think themselves Christians believe that they're Christ murderers. They're advocates for the murder of Christ, and that's not what this is going to be about. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not saying
Way
that
to
I'm
cover
not.
your bases and not be martyred up front.
Well, I just want people to know because it's like that's
Like, I'm not hanging
99
on a cross,
as
guys.
far. No, I mean, and
Only
you
if
know
it's
what?
shaped like an X.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not. And if you put that guy up on a cross, you better get another one ready because you better put me up next. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that because because I think this is a big problem. I think that a lot of Christians, they were taught only about the death of Christ, and this might have led to the militancy of Christ. People wanting to be like Christ, but only knowing that Christ died, then they want to die for God. Instead of teaching people what Christ did for like 33 years before that, which was he lived for God, right? Or lived for you, or whatever you want to call that. Like this idea of trying to do something for other people your whole life. And it seems pretty awesome because he got to travel. He got to wear this cool white outfit. He got to eat with tax collectors and prostitutes. He saw a lot of interesting stuff in his life. Don't get me wrong. But like he gave up very little, arguably. He just gave up everything. I like it. I like that. I like that whole thing. I want to focus on that, not on the idea that you can be a pedophile because Jesus died. Right. I think that's really broken. I think we need to get rid of that as a thing. We need to get that's a bad way of looking at Jesus.
You can do these things in greater, he said. See, I'll play with Christians. I haven't given
Yeah,
up
I
on
like
it,
that.
but it's like a lot of people are just fighting over language stuff. So it's like, get to the, dare I say, I help with metaphor and breaking it down. It's like, y'all, like there's ways to talk about this that doesn't need to get blood spilt. But if people take their fucking beliefs too seriously, if you hold on, that's the Buddhist thing. Clutch too tight, you crush the flower, even if it's pretty. It's like, holy shit, y'all, wake up and live. Act like you know, as this motherfucker would say.
Yeah. All I know is I don't know nothing. I think
We know a little.
Socrates said that.
He knew enough to enunciate that verbally through a language.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like we play games with ourselves and idealize these Stoics or anybody. It's like, oh, they were so this. It's like, guess what? Jesus had diarrhea at times. Guess what? Mary, whatever it is, Mary was a fucking.
She yelled a lot.
Dyslexic.
She
whatever
she threw her sandal at Jesus. Right.
Yeah,
She cast
Muhammad
the first sandal.
probably was. I don't even want to speak about him because his followers tend not to
idea.
get jokes.
Good idea.
Yeah. I do want to have straight up David Ewing Jr., me, you, us four should hang out sometime in Manchester because he won't do much beyond selling his books, I guess. And I'm like, y'all, you can't just hide behind the fucking lemonade stand anymore. This isn't going to work. Ideologies suck ass. And look at Palestine and Israel. That's where you go.
Well,
so we have to like play with games and not in.
I respect that he doesn't want to put out anything other than the few things he puts out.
He's too professionally minded.
Yeah, if you're trying to put out a perfect message and you want it, you want people. He doesn't want people to know him. He wants people to know his work.
I don't care that his family does business in China.
No,
let's hang out.
He doesn't want anyone else to be confused about like the message he's presenting because of him in his life. He wants it to be people
ideologically pure.
It's a good way to like. If I had done
Emperor card, man.
If I had done that,
you couldn't.
Who knows where your parallel self
you
is?
Couldn't
now,
do that, Andreas. You did.
Church already been built.
Yeah,
you couldn't do that. It's not in your cards. I don't know his chart because maybe I do. I forget. We were going to have him on the episode a few times. I mean, that's your whole dick you're writing on that one, right, Raphael? But he's never been on TRH because he basically wouldn't talk about his life, which to me is problematic. It's like, don't throw fucking 10 commandments at people and then not explain your origins.
It's not about 10 commandments, Jim, and I have to
Pharaonic
say,
triggers.
Unless you know about the content, please.
I don't.
Yes, then don't infer.
Don't be butthurt. Don't be butthurt.
No, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing that Andreas.
This is a good example. This is religious warfare because I've spoken against your prophet. You're gonna bring the sword to me. And I'm like,
I'm just telling you. No, Jim. I'm saying before you know what it's about,
But there's at least
about it.
there's at least 50% of the audience that agrees with both of you.
They love
so
it.
That's
Suck
what
on
I
the
think
tail
is,
all day, man.
is
Sophia
interesting.
comes in many forms, it seems. By the way, when I was in Switzerland for a year, I did this thing and it was cult-like because people fucking loved it and adapted it. You can have it. I'll give it to you. There you go. There's your secret handshake. It makes an X.
That's cool. It's
No,
like
you
a
gotta
slap
make
a trout.
completion. It's
Oh, you have to slap a
triangulation
trout.
there.
Okay,
It's pretty
yeah.
simple. But I'm not going to write books on that and patent it. Don't worry. So it's yours.
Sweet.
Yeah. But
Well,
I mean, it takes all kinds. I'm not hating on anybody. I think it's odd how people fucking strut in their shoes and the Playboy Mansion tunnels they use to get to each other and all this thing. But and if you get that illusion, my God, are you aware? But so bottom line is, I think this tea leaf thing. I mean, we're coming up at 2 hours, and we're getting into Raphael's like personal space, so I don't want to do that. Your inner self is your inner guide. If you want to listen to David Ewing Jr. stuff, rad. I am almost like, hey, he's not poor. Let's meet in Egypt. Let's go right now.
We should go to
please,
Egypt.
Please
yeah.
poke it. Please poke the styrofoam thing for me.
Dr. Sem Ozonagich is in going to Egypt to see the pyramids. We should all meet. That'd be great.
I mean, I'll meet anywhere. It doesn't Manchester. Fuck yeah.
That would be the thing I'd like actually is Osmanagich and
Vienna. I'm coming
Ewing,
through, bitch.
because Osmanagich and Ewing both have really strong beliefs about their realities.
How big of them?
And their realities are very like different.
That'd be really cool to have them talk actually.
Because like they
if
believe
you can pull that off, Andreas, that'd be
they believe
amazing.
in entirely opposite things being completely true. And
I've shown you the way. Just have interviews like I do,
Yeah.
and you'll be fine. You'll fly high, my friend. But you gotta do it for like an hour. Get their fucking bio. Don't just jerk off on fucking fantasy stuff.
Ewing Jr.'s been to every city, bro. He's been to every place. He's
that's his party chip.
Yeah,
he
bro.
plays that hat a lot. He's like Guinness Book, and I'm like, word, travel with us.
Well, yeah,
we'll see. It was a one and done. It was for the record book, not the TeamRabbitHole.
Yeah.
We'll see. But probably not Raphael. I could just tell shutting down emotionally on this one. But in any event, Emperor card all day. Because guess what, y'all? It's about being real. And if we can't speak our truth, whatever that might be, our beliefs shape the world around us. And then we dance with these beliefs and hope to God, even if I'm joking about a guy I don't know, David Ewing Jr., I have nothing against him. We should dance well, knowing that Snoopy is not Pinocchio, is not Medusa, is not all this. They're all different. And that lends itself more to the multiverse, highfalutin psychedelia that you used to kind of purport more, Raphael, but we haven't spoken in so long that you sound like a militant Islamicist now, but whatever.
I think you misjudged.
Again, Jim, I'm
not judging.
a
I'm
whole
observing.
lot of assumptions without actually understanding the content. Just
I have no understanding.
We actually at one of these days we will though. We'll talk a bit about like what I kind of believe, and I think Raph might agree with me. We could talk about this about ancient pre-Muhammadan Islam, because this has come up. Like the Bible has Muhammad, it means the sweet one. Jesus is described as a sweet one. Solomon is described as Muhammad. It's so much more nuanced and complicated.
I'm so tired of these stories. Aren't you all tired of these archetypal stories? Let's stop Agregor milking them. It's like,
well, it's just like we gotta stop pretending. We gotta stop pretending that like this modern thing is this old thing all the time, right? Like
no, it's the same thing. Yeah. But we're taking some people. Hey, the fucking Manly P Hall thing. Some people are like, fire's the shit. The earth started in the fire. Everything's elementally fire. Some people are like, no, water. Same idea. Everyone focuses on
again, like if you think about like how Christians were murdering other Christians and saying it was all right because they're gonna drink their blood and it's gonna forgive them and everything like that, and there's all these bones turned into churches,
blood angels.
Yeah, and they built all these churches made out of their bones, but then simultaneously you've got these groups of Christians who got more and more like, don't kill my people, right? You get a Gnostic sect that's like, I'm going to defend my family.
Matata Christian.
Well, yeah, eventually that becomes Islam. Islam became more and more violent because it was defensive. But if you look at these other Christianities, like they were all very similar. It's just they were more passive. So it's important to understand like today's violence is a product of not or it's not the origin of the religion, right? As all.
Oh, it's tricky. I mean, even the prophetic. This is where you get into this stuff. It's like you two will always be at odds, Ishmael and Isaac. I mean, there's like a prophecy being like, yeah, you guys are
maybe to bring it together in a practical sense and the overall
Libra.
What I think it really is about. I'd be curious what you think, Andreas, because I heard this story again from Michael Tsarian many years ago. In terms of the opposition between Moses and Akhenaten, So this whole, or would it be or Akhenaten and Ammon actually, where you then said, okay, maybe Akhenaten actually refers to Moses, and to make it very simple for everyone, one ideology being the, let's say, pharaonic priesthood control group, where, how should I put it best? You have myriad gods, at least in the supposed ancient Egypt stories. Yes.
And then one dude came in and said, "Fuck all y'all, it's one sun. Fuck all y'all." And
he had 2 cups of tea, just so you know. Yeah.
Yes,
5 grams in silent darkness.
And whether this basic ideological opposition is still continuing to this day, and no matter what label we put upon it, that's the real differentiation or opposing forces, if there really are any.
Yeah, well, Andreas, it was posed to you, but the thought that comes to mind is Kai Pacha, who's been on the podcast a few times, TRH podcast. Great astrologer. He's down in Costa Rica. Shout out. Basically, all souls are either moving towards unity or division of, independent, like monadism. And you're really moving towards one or the other largely always. Not that you can't do both, but yeah, some people are like, hey, we're in the forest. Don't fight over foxes or caterpillars or trees. And some people are like, I goddamn love the river, and anything not in this river is fucking gonna die.
Well, again, you could be.
So yes, Raphael, it's a polarity toroid.
You could be
yes.
You could be hyper obsessed with the material. You could be hyper obsessed with like the empty chaos, but it's probably like it's probably like a tug of war, and you try to like stay in the middle and not get pulled into either.
Supersymmetry. Arcade
Yeah.
Fire, Supersymmetry. I'll check that out. Anyway, we've hit that 2-hour mark. Raphael's probably at his limit with me, and Andreas, as always, is.
I'll invite you guys on later, though. I'm going to do a show Wednesday Ultras tonight, so Gun Wu is going to be talking about.
I won't probably be there, but that's the guy's name. I asked you who that Asian dude is because I was like, he's woke and cool. He looked like a goddamn FBI agent in the dark. What the fuck? I was like, where is this Matrix operator?
He's not super stoked with his time in the military.
He was a military kid?
Yeah, I think the Black Mold, like, he thought, like, if they loved him, like, he loved America, then they would have gotten rid of that Black Mold. So, I mean, I think that kind of soured his opinion. But that's okay. He's a good guy.
It all occurred. So you're doing a show, I guess, after this.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know if this went the way you wanted it to, Andreas. I don't even know if we got into the time.
It was a TeamRabbitHole if there ever was one, right? That's exactly how they go. You put, like, the cards up. You want to do more cards?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
It was one of those, for sure. But, obviously, if there's any like parting sentiments, you guys do a lot on your own, so plug yourselves. Doubt you need to, but my last thought would be, guys. I mean, the T fucking says it all. Be an Emperor card, right? But it's like, look, your inner self is your inner guide. It's all out there playing with you, but you just need to be quiet and still, and you'll find yourself. And if you want to see yourself like swashbuckling on top of a pyramid with a Mohammedan, go for it.
I'd say if you haven't seen it, because it's not like a huge deal, but if you Facebook still, there's the
I'm the 44th member, bitch.
xChurch is a thing you can join. I wanted to be a monk, but I never got the chance.
That red one is Raphael. He's a member too. What number were you, Raphael? You drank the Kool-Aid.
A chance. That's pretty funny. So yeah, if you guys want it, you can check out xChurch. It's not a big deal, but that exists.
Is your I mean, I guess you get paid through that fucking thing on the top corner thing, but it's got a Hindu symbol in it. Is that intentional?
which thing? Oh, you mean my QR code? Oh yeah,
the
QR code has it has Muhammad. That's Muhammad and Ali written 4 times in Kufic.
Sting like a bee.
Well, there is more to learn. Since it's technically a rabbit hole show, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Andreas, so much. Thank you, Jim, as always. And thanks everyone for bearing with us. I guess if you look up all the references and ideas and books, you have a whole year of content. So thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, take care, guys. Peace. Oh, yeah. Make sure you watch Act Like You Know 26. Jim.